Cultivation Immortal. My clone is a giant beast in the wilderness. Introduction. Yunhe has traveled through it, and it still has a dual soul-piercing effect. In the world of cultivation, he is an unknown spirit bee farmer. In the world of monsters, he is just an ordinary turtle. He just wants to cultivate immortality quietly. But I never thought that after painstakingly cultivating for thousands of years, when I look back, he has already dominated the demon and immortal realms. Chapter 1. Soul Double Penetration. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The warm spring breeze brushes over the hazy mountain stream, dispersing the thin mist of dawn. Buzzing, in the pouring warm sun, a hard-working bee like a golden bean emerged from the beehive, vibrating its wings as thin as cicada wings. Bathed in the sunlight, it pounced into the flowers. A gentle and delicate fragrance lingers around the valley, emitting a refreshing spring scent. Suddenly, amidst the vibrant flower bushes, a fist-sized wasp with black stripes swirling around its body swiftly passed by. The strong wind brought by its wings crushed the flower buds, bent the grass, and scattered morning mist and dewdrops. Puff! A water arrow suddenly shot out, piercing through the speeding wasp, and the broken wings slowly drifted down. The black hornet just arrived in spring. Amidst the swaying grass, half a person tall, a young man dressed in thick linen clothes and carrying a bamboo box walked out with a furrowed brow. The young man has a high and straight nose, shallow eye sockets, straight facial features, a clear and gentle voice, and a steady pace. Carefully picking up the black-ringed wasp that was still twitching on the ground, Yunhe's face became even more solemn as he watched its body shape match the distinct yellow and black stripes on its body. It's really troublesome not to freeze these black hornets to death in a winter. In his hand, the abdomen of the worker bee is full, with rippling patterns and powerful wings, indicating that it is very dangerous and highly aggressive. The black-ringed wasp is a very dangerous bee species that feeds on meat, weak bees, and honey. Even the queen of the black hornet is a genuine monster with the ability to control the entire black hornet colony. Once a worker bee of the black hornet is discovered, it indicates that there must be a nearby nest of the black hornet, which houses a queen bee. For a bee farmer like Yunhe who relies on raising bees to obtain nectar for a living, this is nothing but a disaster. He first discovered the black-ringed wasp in late autumn last year, which caused significant damage to his spiritual bees and resulted in a failure to harvest his spiritual honey. I thought that after a winter passed, even if not all of those damn black hornets froze to death, their scale would have greatly decreased. But now it seems that the bee colony may not have suffered much damage, but has actually developed better. Looking at the dozens of spiritual bees searching for honey in the bushes, Yunhe felt a sense of helplessness in his heart. A spirit bee of such a small scale will soon be consumed by Huohuo, right? It's a question whether he can survive the next cold winter, not to mention that the spiritual honey has not been harvested. We need to find a way to get rid of this group of black hornets. The warm spring sunshine shone on Yunhe, but he felt a hint of coolness. I couldn't help but shiver. With his current cultivation level of 2 levels in the Qi refining period, how can he deal with the black ring wasp bee king, who is at least a first-level monster? Not to mention the queen bee, he probably won't be able to handle it with a few more ordinary black hornets. Cultivating immortality. How difficult it is. Thoughts surged in my mind, and I couldn't help but reminisce about my past life. Yunhe is a traveler. Half a year ago, he was still a social animal in his 30s, working hard for a mortgage. He didn't dare to find a partner or socialize too much. I thought life could be worse than him back then, no matter how bad it was. Until an accident led him inexplicably into this world. This world full of cultivators. Here, some can roam the sky, some can live for hundreds or even thousands of years, some can burn mountains and boil the sea, but these have nothing to do with him. He is just a weak bee farmer. Having only 2 levels of cultivation in Qi refining, he had to accept the lower level identity in the cultivation world. Backed by the safety zone delineated by Hejianfang City, I harvest 4 or 5 inferior spiritual stones every year through spiritual honey harvest, after removing high taxes, in order to maintain my cultivation with difficulty. To deal with the Black Hornet, at least you need to cultivate in the middle stage of Qi cultivation, right? Yunhe thought to himself. Next came more helplessness. Not to mention the mid-stage of Qi refining, it's a question of when he can break through to the third level of Qi refining. I can only hope that the group of Black Hornets has a bigger goal. Don't stare at my small swarm of dozens of spiritual bees. Yunhe murmured a sentence while pinching the formula with both hands. Weak spiritual power flows through, and the most basic, bee control technique is used. The swaying bees seem to be guided by some kind of command and fly towards the flowers guided by Yunhe. It's really not possible, he can only choose to raise the spirit bees in a different place. Although it will come at a great cost. Because the area where every spirit bee farmer can place bees is planned by the local managers, if he wants to change places and spend money on management, he may empty out the spirit stones he has worked hard to save over the years. It may not even be enough. Yun Daoyu, let go of the bees. At this moment, a middle-aged cultivator with the appearance of an old farmer walked over the field ridge with a hoe, and saw Yunhe smiling and greeting. Yeah. Seeing the person coming, Yunhe's face squeezed out a smile. This is his neighbor Pan Hongxiu, a 40-year-old middle-aged cultivator with a cultivation level of 3 levels of Qi. He is a spiritual farmer. Master Luyun from Fangshi said that this year will be a harvest year, and you can leave some honey residue for us then. Pan Hongxiu couldn't see his forced smile. Yunhe took a slight breath to calm his mood and said, Pan Daoyu, just sell us your aged spirit rice at a cheaper price. Ha ha ha. It's easy to say. Looking at the neighbor walking away on the field ridge, carrying a hoe and humming an unknown tune. If they don't say anything, who would know that they are so-called cultivators, rather than farmers working in the fields? I let out a deep sigh. If only he were a spiritual farmer. At least you don't have to worry too much about the invasion of Black Hornets. Unfortunately, although he is a dual spiritual root with both water and metal properties, he does not have the wood spiritual root that spiritual farmers need. The sky is getting dark. Yunhe, who had been sunbathing in the bushes all day, finally breathed a sigh of relief. After eliminating the worker bee of the Black Hornet, no second worker bee appeared. He pinched the formula with both hands. The spirit bees swimming in the flower bushes entered the bamboo box behind him in an orderly manner. Stepping on the sunset, Yunhe returned to the guard formation of Fangshi. This is the truly safe place. In a corner of the neighborhood, there is a messy and densely populated shantytown where these lower-level monks live. Here, because it is within the coverage area of Fangshi Dajin, a considerable amount of rent needs to be paid every year. Greeting several familiar neighbors, Yunhe returned to his residence. The floor area of the house is quite large, with rooms, kitchens, training rooms, and more. Even inside the fence outside the house, there are many vegetables planted. After simply mixing brown rice with aged spiritual rice to cook dinner and solving the problem with the 5 organs temple, Yunhe entered the cultivation room for daily practice. 3 hours later, Yunhe slowly opened his eyes, with a slight convergence of spiritual light at the bottom of his eyes. Feeling the faint growth of spiritual power within the body. At this rate of spiritual power growth, it may take at least 2 to 3 years to reach the 3rd level of gas refining. Although the name of Jin Shui Yuan Jing may sound quite impressive, it is actually just a cultivation technique on a bad street. The only advantage may be that it fits well with my dual attribute spiritual roots of gold and water. The 4 elements of cultivation, wealth, and dharma, are not related to him at all. Only when he can practice quickly can he have ghosts. But he quickly perked up his spirits. Almost there, the opportunity is approaching. Thinking of this, I didn't have time to go back to the bedroom and took off my shoes and fell asleep on the training couch. Soon, Yunhe entered a deep dream. When he opened his eyes again, his gaze seemed to undergo a huge change. In a vast lake that is nowhere to be seen, a basin-sized turtle scraped open the pitch-black mud and poked out two nostrils to the water surface, slowly spitting out bubbles. A nimble gleam flashed deep in the seemingly dull eyes. The turtle withdrew its head and carefully glanced at the accumulated mud in front of it, then breathed a sigh of relief. That's right, this turtle is Yunhe. Whenever he falls into a deep sleep, his soul awakens on this turtle. At first, Yunhe thought it was just a dream, but later he realized that everything was actually real. He not only possesses the body of a human, but also the body of a turtle. Just as he guessed whether it was equivalent to having a controllable body similar to an external incarnation, he was surprised to find that the spiritual power of the two bodies was also common. However, this commonality requires a certain amount of time. Perhaps it is because as a human cultivator, he cultivates spiritual power within his body, while as a turtle, he cultivates demonic power, so transformation takes time. It is also possible that the distance between these two bodies is too far apart. In summary, it took him half a year to finally transform from an ordinary turtle to a first-level early monster with weak demonic power, equivalent to the cultivation level of a cultivator's second level of Qi refining. Monsters are more concerned about the survival of the fittest and the survival of the fittest than human cultivators. Yunhe reached out his paw and gently stroked the mud in front of him. It can be vaguely seen that a palm-sized dark green plant, resembling a lotus seed, is hidden in the accumulated mud. On the dark green roots, there are strands of extremely light golden patterns interwoven. Lingji. Although I don't know what kind of spiritual plant this is or what level it belongs to. But Yunhe knew that it was about to mature. This was accidentally discovered when it passed by here a month ago. Since then, it has been buried with mud and nestled in the surrounding mud without leaving, waiting for it to fully mature. He had a premonition that if he could eat this lotus-like spiritual plant, it would bring him considerable benefits. At that time, if his idea is correct and the cultivation of the two bodies is interconnected, then the increase in demon power can drive the increase in spiritual power of the other body, and he may be able to break through the third layer of Qi refining as soon as possible. It should mature completely by tomorrow at the latest. Gollum, just as Yunhe patiently waited and some expectations arose in his heart, the surrounding water suddenly surged. The surge of water shook and dispersed the silt that enveloped the spiritual plant. Damn it! Seeing this, Yunhe's heart suddenly tightened. Yu reading www.yuyukeangshu.net. Quickly flicking his claws, he attempted to pile up the scattered mud again, but with little effect. Suddenly, Yunhe's scales trembled and a strong sense of crisis arose. Suddenly unable to cover up for Lingji, the limbs and head suddenly retracted into the turtle shell. Next second, a half-meter-long golden carp rushed towards with a panicked expression. Control rapids and disperse silt. Accidentally, it also noticed the soon-to-mature spiritual plant, and its eyes suddenly lit up. With a flick of its tail, the fish opened its mouth slightly and swallowed the spirit plant that Yunhe had been waiting for in one bite. For a moment, the demon power surged on his body. At the same time, the stopped golden carp also noticed Yunhe nestled in the mud. One fish, one turtle, the line of sight intersects. He waited for a full month before being picked a peach. If it weren't for Yunhe clearly feeling that he was definitely not a match for this carp, he would definitely be pouncing now. However, before the contempt in the eyes of the golden carp disappeared, it panicked again and looked towards the direction it was swimming towards. Only see. A black python with no weaker demonic power chased after it. But soon, the golden carp felt the surging demon power inside its body, its eyes lit up, and it became confident. Take the initiative to swim towards the black snake. The next moment, the golden carp and black python collided fiercely in this water area. Just suffering Yunhe. Not only has the peach been plucked, but it is still at the center of the struggle between two demon beasts. The only thing worth celebrating is probably that he was too weak and did not attract the attention of the two demon beasts. Chapter 2. Source Refining Method. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Bang. 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 The fierce collision of a fish and a snake stirred up this water area. Yunhe huddled in the turtle shell and dared not move. Now he doesn't crave any spiritual plants, he just hopes these two disaster stars can leave soon. The struggle between the two monster beasts does not involve many skills and spells, only the collision between bodies and a competition between strength and power. This is the most primitive battle, but it is also what most monsters are passionate about. They should all be first-level monster beasts, at most in the later stage. Thoughts flashed through Yunhe's mind as he struggled to stabilize his figure in the turbulent water flow. But the monsters in the later stage of the first level are not something he can deal with just a turtle in the early stage of the first level. Surprisingly, the carp just fell behind slightly. Although this golden carp was in a state of being hunted before, it was able to compete with the black snake after swallowing the immature spiritual plant. When Yunhe thought of the spiritual plant that should have belonged to him and could greatly increase his demonic power, his heart was dripping with blood. I don't know how long these two monster beasts have been fighting, and the surrounding water has become completely turbid. Not finished yet. Yunhe, who held a hint of the evil idea of picking up leaks in his heart, was completely trapped in the mud, only revealing two eyes and paying attention to the battle. Hiss. The black python swallowed with a hint of anger in its eyes, but more importantly, it was helpless. The golden carp, upon seeing this, also stopped moving and spat out bubbles, as if it was nearing the limit of its physical strength. Stop fighting. Yunhe, who was huddled at the bottom of the water, was somewhat disappointed, but there was nothing he could do. These two monsters can't do anything to each other, and they already have a certain level of intelligence. They both know that giving up on this is the best choice. Just before they could leave each other, suddenly an orange bird beak, like a sharp arrow, plunged into the water. The black water snake, which was unmatched in Yunhe's eyes the previous second, couldn't even make a sound and was immediately taken away. You can see through the turbid and gradually fading water flow. On the water surface, at some point, a phoenix crane stopped. With a gentle flick of the bird's beak, it plucked out the black snake bile and swallowed it into its belly. Yunhe was stiff all over, and his movements were extremely slow as he withdrew his head again. Second-level monster. The heart is filled with turbulent waves. Surprisingly, it is a second-level monster that can be compared to the monster of a foundation-building cultivator. Can't see me, can't see me. Whoosh! At the same time, the golden carp, who was also aware that the situation was not right, immediately ignored so much and fled towards the distance with a sudden swing of its tail. A hint of mockery flashed through the eyes of the phoenix and crane above the water surface. Puff! The sharp and slender bird beak fell down again, and in Yunhe's eyes, the extremely fast carp seemed to crawl like a turtle. The beak accurately pierced through the body of the golden carp. One, he seems to have high demands for food. The bird's beak only picked out the two eyes of the carp to eat. Yunhe, who witnessed the whole process, dared not move at all. He felt the aggressive gaze falling on him. However, he seemed to feel a hint of disgust. Has he been despised? Disliking is good, disliking is good. Yunhe, who had not developed any dissatisfaction, waited for a long time in a shrunken posture until the water flow calmed down again and the murky sludge gradually settled. Only then did he dare to cautiously poke his head out. Where else is there a trace of that phoenix crane? Huh, Yunhe let out a long sigh and collapsed in the mud. It's too scary. For it, just a first-order early monster, the almost overwhelming momentum of a second-order monster is really terrifying. He couldn't even muster too many thoughts of rebellion. That fish and snake is the best portrayal. By the way, that carp and black snake. Yunhe had a stirring reaction. The second-order one crane has high demands for food, only eating the snake bile of the black snake and the fish eye of the carp, which means that the corpses of these two later-stage first-order monsters have been preserved. These are all treasures. Now the surroundings are calm, which is due to the deterrent effect brought by the second-order one crane activity. It is estimated that in a while, some monsters that smell the blood may come to explore. Thinking of this, Yunhe, who had stopped for a moment, quickly pulled his paws and crawled out of the mud. Swim towards the direction of the golden carp. Quickly, he found the half-meter-long golden carp corpse hanging quietly in the water. Grasping his tail in one bite, he tried to swing his limbs and swam towards the direction of the black snake corpse. For it, which is now only the size of a basin, this half-meter-long golden carp is already considered a giant. However, based on the principle of not wasting, it still hopes to keep the bodies of these two monsters as its own. Just halfway through the swim, Yunhe slowly stopped and let out a deep sigh. Is it really too late? It once again felt the strange flow of water around it and knew that other monsters had approached. Make a decision now. Abandoning the body of the black snake, he swam towards the direction of mud and algae in the distance. Fortunately, it had considered this possibility from the beginning, so it chose the golden carp corpse instead of the black snake corpse. First-order monsters like them do not have demon elixirs, and the black snake that has lost its snake bile obviously has lost its most valuable thing on its body, leaving only a pile of blood-filled monster flesh. But the golden carp is different, it was just eaten by the one crane. Moreover, it also ate the spiritual plant, and Yunhe estimated that the golden carp could not completely digest it so quickly, perhaps they could draw more benefits from it. Yunhe, dragging the golden carp corpse, arrived at the mud algae and dug a hole in the mud at the fastest speed. Then, he dragged the carp corpse and hid it inside. When it had just concealed its form, the calm waters became chaotic again due to the corpse of the black snake. Fortunately, no other monster noticed it. However, Yunhe did not completely relax his vigilance. Although no monsters noticed this, the fishy smell of mud algae may not completely mask the fishy smell of fish blood, and it must be dealt with as soon as possible. In the narrow mud cave, Yunhe looked at the carp in front of him, which had a large hole in its body and its scales emitting light golden fluorescence. Don't waste it. Thinking of this, he bit into the hole in the golden carp's abdominal cavity. The eagle-like turtle's beak made a creaking sound as it rubbed against its golden scales. From this, it can be seen that if it weren't for the phoenix and crane pecking through the scales, even if Yunhe had obtained this golden carp corpse, he might not have been able to eat it. Gudong. Gudong. He drank it one by one with a hint of warm and cool blood. Yunhe didn't notice that there were strands of extremely shallow golden threads interwoven in the crimson fish blood. Hiccup. After a while, Yunhe's cheeks, limbs, and even his turtle shell showed a hint of red. He stumbled down and let out a long burp. His eyes were blurred, as if he was drunk. No, I can't digest it a bit. Yunhe's body began to heat up, and the temperature of the turbid water in the mud cave was also rising. This is a manifestation of its inability to fully digest the energy and demonic power in the blood of the golden carp. The blood of the golden carp seemed to be more energetic than he had imagined. Is it because the variety of this golden carp is not bad? Or is it because the spiritual plant that has not been fully digested? I tried my best to shake my head and keep myself as clear as possible. He tried to digest and absorb the energy that was about to boil. But the boiling energy had no intention of calming down, even driving his own blood to become active. If this continues, he will soon fall into a coma. The original active absorption will become passive digestion. At that time, a large amount of valuable energy will be wasted. Suddenly, the golden threads that entered his body along the blood split and turned into smaller fragments, penetrating into his blood as if something had been excavated by these golden fragments. Meanwhile, in Yunhe's drowsy mind, a magic door suddenly appeared. Source refining method. Although it was his first time seeing this method, Yunhe felt very familiar, as if it originated from something he should have mastered within his body. Feeling the increasingly expanding energy surging within his body, he immediately stopped hesitating and took the initiative to activate his demonic power according to the description of the source refining method. For a moment, the boiling energy became more active, the warm blood also became fiery, and the stomach burned like fire. But the feeling of uncontrollable expansion is gradually dissipating, and although the energy is still raging, it is being gradually digested and absorbed by him. Useful. Yunhe's spirit suddenly lifted, his heart sank, and he tried his best to operate the source refining method. 10 spiritual crystals. Yunhe smiled and handed over Ling Jing to the steward in charge of guarding, and walked out of the library in the neighborhood. This is a library set up by the Wang family in charge of the neighborhood, which is available for all cultivators in the neighborhood to browse information and materials. Although there is not much valuable information in it, most of it is basic knowledge or common sense of the Qi refining period. Each time you enter an hour, you still need to collect 10 spirit crystals. However, for many Qi refining practitioners who are new to the cultivation world, these basic knowledge are still very valuable. At least, I won't miss valuable spiritual plants and treasures because I don't know them. I didn't expect to be able to access it. Although Yunhe felt sorry for those 10 spiritual crystals as he walked out of the library, fortunately he was able to figure out some things. The original lotus-shaped spiritual plant was called Tracing Blood Lotus, which is a top-grade spiritual plant with the greatest function of allowing demon beasts to uncover their roots and trace their bloodline. After all, no matter what kind of monster or animal it is, if we trace its origin, we can find a remarkable ancestor to some extent. Of course, the effect of tracing blood lotus varies depending on the monster, and how much it can be excavated also depends on luck. It is one of the spiritual plants that some cultivators who are good at guarding beasts are passionate about. Yu reading www.yuukiangshu.net. The black water snake, on the other hand, is a top-grade monster named black water snake. It does not carry any poison on its own, but its underwater power is quite strong. As for the golden carp, no relevant information was found in the collection. Perhaps, but due to time constraints, he was unable to find it. So, the source refining method actually originates from the pitiful ancestor bloodline within oneself, which can enhance the efficiency of mutual devouring and transformation between monsters. The demon beast world is even more cruel than the cultivator world, and it is common to fight and devour each other. When the monster's body completely digests the carp's first-order later-stage demon power, its own demon power will inevitably increase, and then it will feed back to the cultivator's body. His heart began to beat violently. 3 layers are available. The 3 layers of gas refining are promising. Even in the middle stage of gas refining, it's not impossible to expect too much. Yunhe's footsteps out of the neighborhood have become much lighter. TSK, the only regret is that the source refining method is only applicable to monsters and not to human cultivators. Although the body of a cultivator and the body of a demon beast share spiritual and demon powers, their spells are not shared, which makes him quite regretful. Wait. As he walked, Yunhe suddenly stopped walking again. Just because a cultivator's body cannot be used does not mean that this method cannot be utilized. He can try to tame demon beasts as his own spiritual beasts and then give them to use. However, demon beasts are not so easy to tame, and besides, they only have 2 levels of cultivation in refining Qi. No. I don't have any monsters, but I have a group of spirit bees. Yunhe's eyes gradually brightened up. Chapter 3. Mutant Hornet. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The spirit bees raised by Yunhe actually belong to demon beasts in a sense, but they are not mainstream. Compared to other wild animals such as tigers and lions, bees are naturally less intelligent. Unless by chance or by nature, ordinary bees are almost impossible to become monster beasts. Return to the shantytown residence, close the door, bring the bamboo box, and open the bee door. Spiritual bees like golden beans are leisurely wandering back and forth on the nest spleen. Seeing the bee door open, the spirit bees flapped their wings and instinctively wanted to fly out. However, Yunhe, who had already prepared it, used the bee control technique to make them calm and composed. Then the fingers flexed and the spiritual power flowed, pulling out a seemingly robust spirit bee. Buzzing, the professional bee hovered in front of him. With a golden body and 3 pairs of small legs, and a fluffy chest, a pair of almost transparent bee wing patterns are clearly visible. At the end of its tail, the retracted abdominal spines are faintly visible. After controlling the spirit bee, Yunhe took out the body of the black-ringed wasp worker bee that he had killed yesterday. Buzzing. Seeing the black hornet, the spirit bee's movements became noticeably slow, and it leaned towards Yunhe's side in fear. "It depends on you whether you can achieve it, little thing." Yunhe muttered to himself in a low voice, then pinched the formula again. Under his control, although full of fear, the spirit bee slowly flew towards the body of the black hornet on the table. When 2 bees come together, you can see how much the difference in body size between the black-ringed wasp and the spirit wasp is. The black hornet has the size of a fist, while the spirit bee is only about the thickness of a thumb at most. Eat. Yunhe, who was maintaining a pinching posture, gave the simplest and most brutal command. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The spirit bee lying on the black hornet hesitated for a moment. Seeing this, Yunhe frowned and increased his spiritual power output, enhancing his control over the spiritual bee. Until then, the spirit bee finally bit the black ring hornet's abdomen fiercely with a horizontal mouthpiece. Pwai, the next second, a viscous, earthy yellow unknown liquid flowed out. Eat it all. Buzz. The spirit bee can only follow suit. Quickly, the body of the spirit bee became somewhat exaggerated and full. Especially the abdomen. Twigs of earthy yellow silk thread linger on it like meridians. However, with the size of a spirit bee, it is impossible to eat the entire black-ringed wasp to the fullest. It fidgeted with its feet and wings, and its most primitive response told it, "I can't eat it anymore." Moreover, the state of the spirit bee has become very strange, as if it has a fever, emitting a hot and dry aura from all over its body. At this point, if someone touches it, they can notice that the temperature of this spiritual bee is surprisingly high. Yunhe's face gradually became serious. The next step is the most important one. Source refining method. Due to the intelligence of the spirit bee, Yunhe was unable to directly teach it the source refining method. You can only use the bee control technique to control the spirit bee in the most tedious way, and then drive it to try using the source refining method. At first, it was very unfamiliar. But gradually, both Yunhe and Lingfeng became proficient and accustomed. Glug. As the source refining method progresses, the spirit bee emits subtle movements. After a while, the hand of Yunhe Song's pinching technique stopped the output of spiritual power. Wipe off the sweat from your forehead and take a long breath. At the same time, the spirit bee also stopped its drawing movement, spun around in a daze, and fell into a coma on the table. The consumption of spiritual power is also too high. Get close to the table. Looking at the body of the black hornet that had been gnawed on for nearly half, as well as the spirit bees that had grown in a circle on the side, Yunhe's expression did not relax. The source refining method should be working. But he didn't know if this spirit bee could wake up again. Gently grab and feel with your eyes closed. There is indeed a slight fluctuation of demonic power. Not much. Far inferior to the black hornet. At the beginning of the first level, the monsters were even more unknown. But this is a change from 0 to 1, from nothing to something. I hope to wake up. Carefully hide the sleeping spirit bee in the pocket of your clothes and carry a bamboo box on your back. Go out and release bees. Lingmi is currently his only source of income from Lingxia, so he still needs to persist in releasing bees every day and strive to produce more Lingmi. Yun Dao Yu, why are you going out late today to release bees? Ha ha ha. I accidentally overslept. Yun Dao Yu, has the bee colony expanded this year? No way, many spirit bees have died from freezing in winter. I hope we don't reduce production this year. It's better for you, Taoist friend. Where. Upon arriving at the designated beekeeping area, Yunhe first observed the circle and confirmed that there were no shadows of the black-ringed wasp. Then, he opened the beekeeping door and released the spirit bees. Although one member is missing, it is not important for the spirit bees. Extracting nectar from flowers and converting it into spiritual nectar is their most instinctive job. After controlling the bees to move freely within a certain range, he sat cross-legged on the field ridge and began to restore the spiritual power he had previously consumed. When his spiritual power was fully restored, Yunhe began practicing his spells again. It is said to be practicing spells, but in fact, he only has 2 in total. One is the bee control technique that spirit bee farmers must learn, which can easily control a certain number of spirit bees and belongs to the first-level lower-level magic. The second one is the water arrow technique used to slay the black hornet, originating from his practice of the golden water element classic. It is also a first-level lower-level and currently his only attack-type spell. In fact, in addition to water arrow technique, the Jin Shui Yuan Jing also includes a metallic spell, the Imperial Gold technique. Eugene Ju is a first-level medium-level spell that consumes more spiritual power. Moreover, practicing this spell requires at least 1 good metal spiritual tool, so Yunhe has never been able to cast it and his proficiency is not high. It's actually water archery. As the turtle became a monster, its natural affinity for water elements gave it a new understanding of water archery. The sun is setting in the western mountains. Another day is about to pass as usual. Standing up, Yunhe patted the dust on his body as he was about to use the spell to summon the spirit bees. Suddenly, his expression changed and he gazed into the distance. Buzzing, I saw 2 small black shadows rushing towards his direction. Yunhe's face changed slightly. 2 black hornets. His heart immediately sank. Yesterday was 1, today is 2. It seems that the group of black hornets really targeted his spirit bees. This extinguished the last glimmer of luck he held. Buzzing. Feeling the scent of 2 black hornets, the surrounding spiritual bees immediately became panicked. Looking at some uncontrollable spirit bees, Yunhe sighed. 2 black hornets are still within his ability range. If we solve 2 more today, we may have a group tomorrow. He can deal with 1, 2, and 3, but when facing a large group of black hornets, he only has the chance to escape. Not to mention him, even a cultivator in the middle stage of chi refining has only the chance to escape when facing the group of black ring wasps led by the black ring wasp queen. Let's solve these 2 first. As the 2 fierce black hornets approached, the spirit bees became more restless. Yunhe immediately pinched the formula, and his spiritual power quickly flowed through his body. However, before he could take action, he saw a tremble in the clothes on his chest. Yunhe was taken aback by the strange sensation. This is... Buzz. Then I saw a spirit bee half the size of a fist fly out of his clothes. Compared to ordinary spirit bees, their bodies are still golden. Just at the end of the abdomen and around the tail spike, 2 dark red lines have grown, adding a bit of momentum. Successfully. Yunhe's eyes lit up. Without time to think about it, 2 black hornets were already approaching. Without hesitation, the spiritual power followed the operation of the manual technique, and a water arrow was suddenly shot out. At the same time, the mutated spirit bee lost its instinctive fear when facing the black hornet, and even showed a hint of longing. It actually charged directly towards one of them. Puff! The arrow, compressed by the water flow, without any doubt pierced through one of the low-intelligence black hornets and killed it. And the other black hornet was stunned and it saw the mutated spirit bee charging towards it. It can feel the scent of food from the mutated spirit bee. But it's a bit different. The other party, it seems like you also treat it as food. It is obvious that the intelligence of the black hornet cannot understand these things. But its instinctive sense of danger made it light out its pitch-black slender tail needle, and Yu reading www.Xiuxian.net welcomed the dark red tail needle exhibited by the mutated spirit bee. Ding! Like a collision between metals. The mutated spirit bee was directly bounced out. The mutable spirit bee showed a ferocity that ordinary spirit bees cannot compare to. After being bounced off, it not only did not retreat, but quickly stabilized its body and flapped its wings again to charge forward. Fortunately, Yunhe timely pinched the key and stopped it. Do you really think that eating half a black hornet can lead to a fight with it? Taking advantage of the fact that the black hornet was attracted by the ferocity of the mutated spirit bee, he once again used the water arrow technique to successfully kill it. Solving two black hornets unexpectedly went smoothly. Buzzing. The mutated spirit bees surrounded the black ring hornet that fell to the ground, sending waves of impatience to Yunhe. Are you addicted to eating? Yunhe's mouth twitched slightly, recalling the mutated spirit bee and ordering him to obediently stay in his palm, observing carefully. There is really a hint of demonic power flowing, but it is very thin. However, the body has become stronger and more aggressive, with sharp and sturdy tail needles and mouthparts, and more powerful wings. Overall, the spirit bees that only ate the black-ringed wasp have achieved a certain improvement in their overall abilities. He is very satisfied with this result. The source refining method is not only useful for monster bodies, but also for spirit bees. That is to say, Yunhe looked at the two black-ringed wasp corpses on the ground, and his eyes slowly lit up. If there are enough black-ringed wasps, can I cultivate a completely mutated colony of spiritual bees? Take a deep breath. Even more, cultivate a whole new group of bee species that can be compared to monsters. Chapter 4. Bee Control Technique. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Buzz, buzz. Buzz. Dot. Return to your residence. Yunhe pinched the formula with both hands. Sure enough. He furrowed his brow. The basic, bee control technique has no problem controlling spirit bees, but when it comes to controlling mutated spirit bees, it appears slightly sluggish. Of course, it's just a bit sluggish, so controlling a mutated spirit bee is not a problem. According to Yunhe's plan, if he wants to cultivate a group of mutated spirit bees, it is obvious that this skill of controlling bees requires a more powerful one. I feel that the upper limit of the bee control technique is 10 mutated spirit bees. Once the number exceeds, control will definitely be difficult. After all, it's just the most basic first-level low-level spell. Using the bee control technique to command ordinary spirit bees is not a problem, but commanding mutated spirit bees that generate demonic power will result in greater pressure. This is just an estimate based on the current mutated spirit bee state. If it eats a few more black ring wasps and continues to improve its demonic power, it may be a question of whether it can flexibly control 10 of them. For now, it's sufficient, but improving bee control abilities or finding higher level bee control spells should be one of the next goals. This requires a large amount of spirit stones to purchase magic spells. At the end of the day, in the realm of wealth and dharma that emphasizes cultivation, wealth always comes first. Let's eat. Watching the mutated spirit bee struggling to suppress its desires, Yunhe let go of its restrictions. Buzzing. Suddenly, the mutated spirit bee pounced on the body of the black hornet and began to nibble on it. Yunhe stood on the side, using the bee control technique to command it to use the source refining method while nibbling. In no time, a whole black-ringed wasp was eaten directly by it, leaving not even a trace of its wings. After eating the black-ringed wasp again, the mutated spirit bee's body became hot and dry again, wobbling twice before falling asleep on the table. The amount that can be digested and absorbed has increased, but is one black-ringed mutual powder its current limit? There is still a black-ringed wasp left. After some consideration, Yunhe summoned 2 ordinary spirit bees again. Just like last time, forcefully controlling them to nibble on the bodies of black hornets. When the 2 black hornet corpses were all eaten, he put away 3 spirit bees that had fallen into a coma. If everything goes smoothly, he can add 2 more mutated spirit bees tomorrow. The number of 3 mutated spirit bees is not large and does not form a scale, but as long as they can stably produce a few mutated spirit bees every day, they will eventually have a swarm of bees that will make the early cultivators of Qi refining scared. At that time, the pressure on the black hornet swarm will not be so great. After hastily finishing dinner, Yunhe dragged his tired body into the cultivation room. Although producing more mutated spirit bees is his next goal, Yunhe is also very clear that his own cultivation is the foundation of everything. Just a little more. Only by improving his cultivation can his lifespan increase accordingly. A monk who is not to live longer. Only by living long can we have a future. In the murky mud, Yunhe slowly opened his eyes. Gently shaking the turtle's head, he felt his whole body heavy and his thoughts chaotic. So the feeling of the spirit bee after eating the black ring wasp is like this. The idea flashed through my mind subconsciously. Yunhe closed his eyes again, silently feeling the changes in his body while adapting to his current state. At this moment, he is really like an old turtle, silently lying in the mud at the bottom of the lake, standing still. After a while, the chaotic and stagnant feeling finally dissipated. After pulling my paws twice and stretching my body, I opened my eyes again. With a hint of surprise in my heart. My body has grown bigger and stronger. It was originally only the size of a basin, but now it has grown more than once, approaching half a grinding wheel. The previously hastily dug underground hole is now almost filled with it, making it extremely inconvenient to move hands and feet. Of course, changes in body shape are not the most important. Demonic power. It has almost doubled in size. If before, Yunhe only had demon power that was barely comparable to 2 levels of cultivation for refining gas, then now he can already compare to 3 levels of cultivation for refining gas. Although it is still an early stage monster, its strength changes can be imagined. You know, he just drank the blood of the golden carp and didn't touch its body. It is normal for monsters to fight and devour each other, but the conversion rate is far from reaching this level. Thanks to the source refining method. There is also the reason why the undigested tracing blood lotus and the golden carp themselves are the first-order late-stage monster. The combination of multiple factors allowed his demonic power to directly break through a small level. If it's all digested, it's likely to bring even greater benefits. Yunhe turned his head to look at the corner, as the carp had been pushed aside due to his growing size. The golden scales have become much dimmer, and there is no longer any smell of blood. After being left for a day, not only was there no odor, but a faint fragrance drifted in. Yunhe instinctively swallowed his saliva. This carp should not be an ordinary monster either. Gulyalu. Yunhe let out a deep, gurgling sound from his body. Suppressing the hunger emanating from his stomach, Yunhe waved his paws, wagged his tail, and pushed away the mud covering him, heading upstream towards the water surface. As soon as they left the mud, some ordinary schools of fish frolicking and wandering around were suddenly scared and scattered. The ghostly aura emanating from him made these ordinary fish instinctively feel fearful. Because the benefits brought by the carp blood have not been fully digested yet, the aura of the Yunhe monster is very obvious at this moment. Ignoring them, he quickly came to the vicinity of the water surface, stirring the water flow. He didn't immediately look up, but carefully looked around the water surface and surroundings. The scene of he instantly killing the black water snake and golden carp is still vivid in his mind, and the danger level of this water area is much higher than he imagined. After confirming that there were no dangerous creatures around, Yunhe finally slowly floated up. 2 nostrils appeared on the water surface. When breathing, do not forget to observe the surroundings with your eyes. Although he is a turtle-like monster, he cannot completely hold his breath and must float up to breathe every once in a while. Isn't there any turtle rest technique? As a turtle, I shouldn't have learned such an ability too much, should I? On the way down, Yunhe couldn't help but think of it. It's too dangerous on the water surface, but the area he's familiar with underwater is relatively safer. He did not wander around or show off due to the improvement of his strength, but honestly retreated to the previous mud cave and slightly expanded it. Going out is just to find something to eat. He still has a carp from the later stage of the first order that he hasn't eaten yet. However, as he was draining the soil out of the mud hole, he noticed that a loach with an arm thickness had also emerged from the nearby mud. It could be a sensation of changes in the surrounding water flow, or it could be the movement caused by scattered schools of fish. Coincidentally, he met Yunhe, who had just poked his head out. Monsters. In the early stages of the first order. However, it is not as strong as him, it should only be a loach that has reached the early stage of the first stage. So without hesitation, Yunhe glared over. The surge of demonic power brings about changes in the water flow. Feeling the beastly aura on his body, the loach suddenly awakened and its scales trembled. But he didn't escape, instead he obediently pressed himself to the ground, making a prostrate appearance and looking at him pitifully. Yunhe. The intelligence of monsters in the early stages of the first order is indeed worrying. Ordinary monsters probably need to grow to the later stage of the first level to have intelligence comparable to human children, and to grow to the second level to be comparable to ordinary people. After thinking for a moment, his short tail suddenly flicked. The water flows out in a threaded shape like a whip. Bang! The loach lying on the ground was directly sucked away by the water flow, flipping several times before slowly stabilizing its body. But it did not feel angry or fearful because of this, instead revealing some humanized joy. After nodding his head fiercely at Yunhe, he twisted his body and swam away. This is the way monsters communicate. Yunhe just conveyed one meaning. Roll. In the world of monsters, having a big fist is the truth. There are not so many twists and turns. If Yunhe doesn't kill it, it means letting it go. When the loach monster swam away, Yunhe nodded contentedly and climbed back into the hole, covering it tightly with soil. On the side of the bed, there is no room for others to snore. Monsters talk about territory. This small piece of muddy land has been designated by him as his own territory. Monsters weaker than him are not qualified to live in the same place. If they are stronger than him, then let's run. Twisting his tail, he walked slowly towards the golden carp, and eagerly swallowed his saliva. Click, the eagle-like mouth bit into the scales of the carp, making a crisp sound. So hard. Even if it dies, the body of the monster will not weaken due to death. After chewing a few difficult bites, Yunhe, adhering to the principle of not wasting, still struggled to swallow it. Crunchy and crispy. I even joked in my heart. After several golden scales were eaten, the tender white fish meat finally emerged, and that faint fragrance was derived from it. I couldn't wait to bite it down. The fiber and fragrance of fish mixed with an unknown juice burst in the mouth. Although turtles have a different taste than humans, Yunhe firmly believes that whoever eats this carp will find it delicious. After eating recklessly, a small half of the carp ate. Hiccup. The feeling of fullness made him stop eating. A warm sensation flows from the stomach inside the body, gradually becoming stronger. UU reading www.uukangshu.net tends to be increasingly hot and dry. However, soon a portion of the heat flow is expelled from the body and dissipated invisibly. And the passage is getting more and more. This is the norm for eating, where the vast majority of energy is wasted. Yunhe quickly settled down and operated the source refining method. Sure enough, the rate of energy loss decreased, and some energy was digested by him, slowly absorbed into his own part. Turtle shells, scales, muscle fibers, demon power, and so on all slowly become stronger with the source refining method. He devoted himself wholeheartedly to absorption until time passed unconsciously and his consciousness returned to the cultivator's body. Reaching out to block the sunlight shining through the window, Yunhe squinted his eyes and slowly sat up, stretching lazily for a long time. It's another beautiful day. He felt the growth of spiritual power in his body. Although the growth rate is extremely slow, it is also faster than his pure cultivation. With the feedback from the monster's body in self-cultivation, if nothing unexpected happens, there is a chance to break through the third level of Qi refining within 3 months. As Yunhe murmured to himself, he couldn't help but smile with joy. Is the middle stage of gas refining still far away, as all 3 layers of gas refining are fast? Although his own talent is extremely poor, he still dares to expect to build a foundation with the body of a cultivator and a demon beast practicing together. After all, the construction period represents being able to live for 200 years. With his past life experiences and accustomed to the colorful world, there is nothing more attractive to him than living for a long time. Get up and wash up easily. Carry a bamboo box on your back and prepare to go out and release bees. Suddenly, I started to look forward to a few black hornets coming today. Chapter 5. Red-striped spiritual honey. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Things went against my wishes. I thought a black hornet came the day before yesterday, but 2 came yesterday. Maybe a large group of black hornets will come knocking on me on the 3rd day. Who knows? Not to mention a large group, Yunhe released bees all day without even seeing the shadow of a black-ringed wasp. Looking at the sun that was about to be obscured by the mountains, he summoned all the spiritual bees back with a spell. Buzzing. A mutated spirit bee, half the size of a fist and with 3 dark red lines on its abdomen, hovers outside the hive. The bee door, which was originally open for spirit bees to enter and exit, seems a bit small for it. The demonic power has increased significantly. Spread out your palm, and the mutated spirit bee steadily stops in the palm. Next, 2 mutated spirit bees with 2 dark red lines hovered around their palms. These are the other 2 spirit bees that ate a black-ringed wasp separately. With the help of the source refining method, mutations have also emerged. Based on their current appearance and state, they should no longer be classified as ordinary spirit bees. Just call it the red-striped spirit bee. The dark red lines on their abdomen represent the strength of their demonic power. The one that underwent the initial mutation already had 3 patterns, while the 2 that have just completed the mutation today have 2 patterns. With a gentle wave of his palm, 3 red-striped spirit bees hovered around him. Squat down. Open the beehive cover. A faint scent of nectar rushed towards me. The golden bean-like spirit bees stayed honestly inside the beehive, and there was already a thin layer of golden honey on the base of the nest. This is the foundation of spiritual honey. As long as it is taken down and processed slightly, and the honey residue is removed, it is the most common spiritual honey circulating on the market. This spiritual honey is rich in nutrients and spiritual power, much more expensive than ordinary spiritual rice, and only some truly wealthy people can afford it. But what he values the most is the other side of the nest base. A small dark red honey spleen appeared in the corner. Sure enough. Yunhe's eyes flickered with light. Although the red-striped hornet has mutated due to the source refining method, they are still essentially spiritual bees, so they can also brew spiritual honey. The red-striped spirit honey has a dark color, but the surface is crystal clear and translucent. Yunhe reached out and carefully drew a mark on this small piece of spleen, then put it in his mouth. Carefully savor and occasionally nod. The entrance is slightly bitter, but the aftertaste is sweet. The spiritual power is more abundant than ordinary spiritual honey. If you can consume red-striped spiritual honey for a long time, your cultivation speed will be much faster. This is what he believes to be the greatest gain after the spiritual bee mutation. Even some top-quality spiritual honey on the market cannot be compared to it. Has the red-patterned spiritual honey advanced? The agricultural products such as lingmi, and lingjiu circulating in Hejianfang City are mostly unregulated spiritual foods. Although the price is expensive, it is for lower-level cultivators like Yunhe. What even those cultivators in the later stage of qi refining and even those in the foundation building period find expensive are those advanced spiritual foods. After all, food is a daily consumable, and a cultivator needs it a lot. It shouldn't be so. Yunhe's eyes were slightly lowered. However, if the red-striped spirit bee can become a true swarm of monster bees, then he seemed to be able to see a large number of spirit stones hitting him head-on. Yunhe quickly covered the beehive lid. This is the true foundation for his future standing, he cannot be careless. 3 consecutive days have passed. Yunhe's monster body is either digesting the golden carp, or on the way to digesting the golden carp. And his cultivator also engaged in the tedious days of releasing bees and practicing day after day. It seems like everything has returned to the dryness he had when he first arrived in this world a few months ago. Fortunately, the demonic power of the monster body slowly but steadily increases, and the energy that is fed back also makes the cultivation speed of the cultivator body faster by an unknown amount, as if one can expect to refine 3 layers of qi. The output of spiritual honey also tends to stabilize. As neighbor Pan Hongxiu said, this year is generally a bountiful year. However, due to the number of red-striped spirit bees, the production of red-striped spirit honey really makes Yunhe feel overwhelmed. Based on the current progress, it is unknown whether half a can of red-patterned spirit honey can be produced during harvest. Early that morning, after several reflections, Yunhe, who was carrying a bamboo box, did not immediately go to release bees, but walked towards the center of the neighborhood. Hejianfang City is named after Hejian because it is located between 2 large mountains, adjacent to a large river flowing through the mountain stream. With green mountains and clear waters, it is a relatively resource-rich place. It is said that there is another first-order spiritual vein hidden beneath it, and the cultivators slowly gathered to trade, becoming a marketplace. Now, the spiritual energy of this spiritual pulse is under the control of the Wang family, the person in charge of the neighborhood, and is blocked by an array, concentrated in several special cultivation areas. These cultivation sites have high rental prices every day. It is said to be a neighborhood, but in fact, the true core buildings do not exceed the number of hands, combined with some low shops and mobile stalls, forming a street. It can be considered the most bustling gathering place for cultivators within a radius of hundreds of miles. After submitting the identity certificate of Lingfengyang, Yunhe passed through the guardian formation of the city and entered the central area of the square. Surrounded by clouds and mist, filled with spiritual energy, this is the true Hejianfang city. He didn't even glance at the buildings on both sides of the street, such as Hongying Tower, Danding Fang, Balian Pavilion, Baishao Tower, and so on. Not entirely. He took a few more glances at the female cultivators on the Hongying Tower, who were dressed in fancy clothes and exposed a large white area. Without him, only with a happy mood. A group of charming hooves. Yunhe, muttering, walked towards a street vendor. There are not only female cultivators in the Hongying Tower, but also ordinary women, descendants of fallen cultivators, or women who have made mistakes, in order to give these low-level cultivators the opportunity to consume. When he first arrived in this world, curious, there's nothing I can do. Taoist friend, do you want to buy talismans? The sound from the booth made Yunhe withdraw his gaze and gather his thoughts. Gao Yu really has a good eye. You don't know, I am the only stall in the entire neighborhood that can fully capture the view of the entire Hongying building. For this position, I had to queue up outside the neighborhood on the 4th watch. The monk who sold talismans smiled as he said, "We are fellow practitioners. Yunhe. Upon hearing this, Yunhe felt speechless in his heart, but secretly praised the cultivator's persistence. Selling talismans while reading. Looking at the building, I really don't waste any time. Taoist friend. Do you want to go to the Hongying Tower together at sunset? Seeing that Yunhe still didn't speak, the familiar talisman seller invited him. Cough, cough. Yunhe coughed low, his eyes fixed. Don't joke, Taoist friend. I'll read Spring and Autumn next. The Spring and Autumn Annals. The talisman seller was taken aback. Isn't it? How do you sell this talisman? Yunhe pointed to a spiritual talisman on the stall and asked. Although it's just a small stall, there are quite a few types of talismans on the stall. Clean up clothes with dust avoidance talismans, warding off evil spirits with warding off evil talismans, protecting oneself with protective talismans, and so on. There are also water arrow talismans, flame talismans, cold ice talismans used as offensive means, and so on. However, most of these spiritual talismans are first-order lower grade. When asked about the price of spiritual talismans, the talisman seller immediately focused and smiled, saying, "My talisman has blocked a blow from a third-level cultivator who has trained Qi. It's also sold quite cheaply, only requiring 5 spiritual crystals. 3 layers of Qi cultivation." Yunhe raised his eyebrows slightly and asked with a slightly teasing expression, "Give it a full blow." This. Haha. Being hit by the key in a single word, the talisman-selling cultivator stuttered and couldn't come up with a reason. Seeing this, Yunhe sneered. 3 spirit crystals, 1, I need 5. When he hasn't seen the world and doesn't know the depth of the spirit talisman in this pool of water. Taoist friend, that's not how the price is paid back. After some bargaining, Yunhe finally spent 18 spiritual crystals to buy 5 lower-level talismans. In this way, he can barely have a certain level of self-protection ability. Taoist friend, look at my warding off evil talismans and flame talismans, both of which are quite good. They are my most skilled spiritual talismans. Seeing that Yunhe did not leave immediately and had also seen his financial strength, selling talismans as a cultivator continued to promote, which can be said to be exhausting his efforts for tonight's spring night. But Yunhe suddenly asked, "What is the price of your red flame talisman?" This is a first-order intermediate spiritual talisman, and it is also one of the few intermediate spiritual talismans on the stall. If the first-level lower-level spiritual talisman is equivalent to the spell of a cultivator in the early stage of Qi refining, then the power of the first-level middle-level spiritual talisman can be compared to the middle stage of Qi refining. The talisman-selling cultivator was momentarily taken aback and immediately became somewhat excited, saying, "The power of this red flame talisman is not small. If you sincerely want an inferior spiritual stone." After speaking, he didn't forget to add a sentence. "No 2 prices. Your red flame talisman is obviously a bit outdated, with its spiritual power on it." Yunhe wanted to struggle again, but was directly interrupted by the talisman-selling cultivator. He waved his hand and said, "Friend Dao, look for the book garden www.zhaoxuan.com. I see that you are also someone who knows the market for spiritual talismans, and I won't tell you anything false. This red flame talisman does have some years, but there is absolutely no problem with the circulation of spiritual power on the talisman, and its power is at most 10% lower. If it weren't for that, could a lower-grade spiritual stone really buy a first-level medium-grade spiritual talisman?" Yunhe knew he didn't say anything wrong. Squeezing his lips, his gaze swept over the stall. After pondering for a long time, he gritted his teeth and said, "Add another warding off evil talisman." Carrying a red flame talisman that was comparable to a cultivator's strike in the middle of Qi cultivation, 5 talismans, and 1 warding off evil talisman, Yunhe left the stall with a painful expression on his face. The reason why he suddenly came to the local market to buy these talismans is because he is ready to take the initiative to search for the Black Ring Hornet. Of course, it's not about rushing out of the safe zone of the neighborhood to die. If you encounter a monster in the middle of the first level or encounter a cultivator, you won't be able to escape. He was just preparing to release the bees and try to find the trail of the Black Hornet on the edge of the safe zone in the neighborhood before the night fell completely. It's best to encounter one or two more naturally, which can accelerate the cultivation of spirit bees. If you don't encounter them, there's no way. However, before attempting to search, one still needs to be prepared for their own safety precautions. As for the Red Flame Talisman of the first level medium grade, it was used as a precautionary measure. Yunhe is really not easy to encounter the queen bee of the Black Hornet, and even a cultivator who disregards the rules of the neighborhood. At least he can have the ability to counterattack with one hand. Of course, Xiuxian also has a brain, not to disregard the rules of the local market for the sake of him, a poor and inexperienced cultivator in the early stage of qi refining. So the main defense is still the Black-Ringed Bee Queen. Chapter 6. Black-Ringed Wasp Hive. You are listening at novel full.audio. Susu. The water arrow slashed through the grass, chopping off new leaves. Seeing the blood and flesh blurred mice in the grass, Yunhe breathed a sigh of relief as his nerves became slightly tense. It's too tight, relax. Pat your cheeks and take a few deep breaths. There's no way. Neither the original owner nor Yunhe himself has ever engaged in combat. I don't have much combat experience. If you really want to say something, you usually deal with the most. Probably some birds or snakes that try to catch spirit bees while releasing bees. The most powerful one may be the Black Hornet I've been facing these past few days. So as soon as he arrived at the edge of the safety zone in the neighborhood, his expression became particularly tense. Looking around in a completely different desolate area from the jurisdiction of the neighborhood, the undulating dark green mountain range not far away, gradually losing its sunlight, is like a sleeping dragon slowly waking up. He quickly suppressed his constantly divergent thoughts. It's just on the edge of the safety zone. Once you find something wrong, you can go back at any time without being so nervous. You can't stay in a safe zone all your life, there will always be a day when you step out. Yunhe's gaze gradually became firm. A trampled path meanders and extends into the distant distance, with weeds overgrown on both sides and scattered small trees, creating a desolate atmosphere. Buzzing. The 3 red patterned spirit bees surrounding his body, as well as the talisman in his hand, gave him a certain level of confidence. Slowly, Yunhe gradually adapted to such an environment. Although he was still alert to some unusual movements, at least he didn't have the initial panic and wouldn't act recklessly to waste his spiritual power. Sometimes, people have to push themselves, otherwise they can only hide in their comfort zone forever. A winding and crawling flower snake, a fleeting fat rat, an unknown insect suddenly jumping up, a big bird flapping its wings away, they were all ordinary beasts, although much larger than what Yunhe had seen in his previous life, he finally got used to them. Walking on the edge, occasionally looking up at the slanting sunset at the western mountain. Go back before the sun sets completely. Today, despite releasing bees, he still couldn't wait for the Black Hornet, so after some hesitation, he decided to follow the plan and try to actively search for the trail of the Black Hornet. Susu. Go. Yunhe lightly tapped his fingers. A 2-striped red spirit bee quickly swept towards the direction of movement under his command. He has also slowly figured out some experience. In most cases, when encountering any movement, the red-striped spirit bee can first investigate the situation. The red-striped spirit bee has weak demonic power, can fly, and its speed is not slow. If it is just an ordinary small beast, even if it cannot fight and escape, there is still no problem. If you really encounter any dangerous creatures, it can also be considered a warning. Although the red-striped spirit bee is precious, no matter how precious it is it is not as precious as its small life. Hiss. Just hear a soft noise. Then I saw the two red-striped spirit bees quickly retreat back. Yunhe's face slightly changed as he saw it. Pinched the formula with both hands. Amidst the surging spiritual power within the body, a stream of water emerged out of nowhere, condensed into the shape of an arrow. Water archery. Whoosh, hiss. Hiss. The movement in the grass became increasingly apparent, and there seemed to be a hint of painful struggle in the voice. Carefully pluck away the lush grass leaves that are half a person tall. In the midst of the grass, a dark-colored mountain dragon was wounded from the abdomen to the back, as if it had been struck by a sharp knife. While struggling on the ground, bright red blood flowed all over the place. Yunhe's expression was slightly relaxed. It's a mountain dragon. The mountain dragon is a four-legged snake, also known as the stone lizard or stone dragon, and is one of the most common creatures in this deep mountain forest. However, waves with demonic power. He raised his eyebrows slightly, somewhat surprised. No wonder his red-striped spirit bee turned around and ran away. Buzzing. 3 red-striped spirit bees hovered around him, seeming restless and restless. When facing the black hornet, it's quite active and excited, so afraid of a mountain dragon. Looking at Xianxia, who no longer had much resistance, Yunhe pondered for a moment before pinching the formula again. Go. Subsequently, under his strong command, 3 red-striped spirit bees rushed towards the struggling mountain dragon. Sharp mouthparts constantly create wounds on the body of the mountain dragon, and its fine scales cannot stop the sharp mouthparts and tail needles of the red-striped spirit bee. The red-striped spirit bee, which was originally somewhat timid and didn't know how to do it, became fierce under the stimulation of boiling blood. In no time, the mountain dragon disappeared, leaving only the sound of 3 red-striped spirit bees nibbling on it. He trained the red-striped hornet not only to deal with the black ring hornet, but also to face other monsters and even cultivators in the future. This is one of his means of resisting the enemy. So they need to adapt to the identity transition from ordinary spiritual bees to red-striped spiritual bees. Seeing blood is the fastest way. After a while, 3 red-striped spirit bees returned to their side. It can be clearly felt that although they are not as fierce as the black hornet's oncoming ferocity, they are also fading away the confusion and helplessness that belong to the spirit bee. This is to exercise you. It's also about exercising me. The black hornet feeds on meat, and the red-striped hornet also inherits this habit to a certain extent. However, the demonic power contained in that mountain dragon is minimal, and the benefits it brings to the 3 red-striped spirit bees are not very significant. Looking up again at Xiuxian. At most in a quarter of an hour, we must go back. Continue along the rugged path. Go back. Unable to find the black hornet, Yunhe was not discouraged. After all, it was originally a matter of luck. If you can come across the best, but if you can't, consider it an experience. Buzz. Suddenly, the movements of the 3 red-striped spirit bee were slightly paused. Immediately afterwards, the other 2 red-striped spirit bees with 2 stripes also stopped hovering. Noticing their changes, Yunhe immediately followed their gaze. Only see. The fist-sized black hornet flew rapidly in one direction under the gradually falling night. Next up, he saw one after another black-ringed wasps coming from all directions, converging towards the same place. This is. The pupils suddenly contracted. Beehive. Surprisingly, it is the location of the black-ringed wasp hive. He just wanted to try his luck, but how could he know that his luck was so good that he directly locked onto the position of the black-ringed wasp hive? It is not difficult to determine the size of the bee colony within the hive based on the number of returning black-ringed wasps. Yunhe immediately controlled the red-striped spirit bee. Let them obediently stick to themselves without making any noise. If the black hornet takes it seriously at this time, causing it to burst out of the nest, it may not even be easy to escape. Quietly and cautiously retreat. Fortunately, the returning black hornet was busy transporting the harvest back, and did not notice the quietly retreating Yunhe from around their nest. However, large bee colonies are avoided. But due to the large number, he still inevitably appeared on the route of a black-ringed wasp returning home. Daring not make too much noise, Yunhe did not attempt to trouble the other party, but continued to retreat. But the black hornet may have smelled the scent of spiritual bees and honey on him and chased after him. That's no wonder of me. Step back to a certain distance and make sure to stay away from the hive before Yunhe decisively takes action. Commanding 3 red-striped spirit bees to encircle, coupled with his own water arrow technique to kill, he hardly gave this black hornet much opportunity to resist, and successfully completed the killing. Buzz. Buzz. But it may be that the black hornet transmitted some information before death, and from afar he could hear extremely dense buzzing. A large black cloud rose up in the already dim environment. He was so scared that he didn't dare to stay any longer. He picked up the body of the black hornet on the ground and ran away. Fortunately, after running into the safe zone for a distance, no black hornet caught up again. Call out. Yunhe's face turned red and his chest fluctuated violently. In addition to nervousness, there is also some excitement. No wonder people say that men are adventurous creatures. Harvest a black-ringed wasp. But this is no longer the most important gain of this trip. Most importantly, he locked in the hive of the active black-ringed wasp nearby. There are dozens of black-ringed wasps in the hive, even if there are not hundreds. If it is only used to feed spiritual bees with the source refining method, and the upper limit of the bee control technique is temporarily ignored, it will be able to have hundreds of red-patterned spiritual bees. At that time, not only will the speed of producing red-patterned spirit honey greatly increase, but he will also have an additional killer trump card to deal with enemies. Yunhe believes that no ordinary cultivator in the early stage of Qi refining can fully retreat when facing the siege of hundreds of red-striped spirit bees. Although it is a bit difficult to capture these dozens of black-ringed hornets, let alone the existence of a queen bee in the book garden www.xiuxian.com. But like today, crouching on the return route of the black hornet, as long as it's old enough, one day we can empty this hive. Stepping on the last ray of sunset, Yunhe walked contentedly towards the direction of the shantytown. Taoist friend, do you have a tooth ceremony? On the way back, Yunhe met an unknown cultivator. The other party was wearing a decent-looking robe, with a smile on their face and a bit of a cultivator's demeanor, which was beyond the comparison of Yunhe and other spiritual farmers who lived in shantytowns. However, this place is not far from the edge of the safety zone, and Yunhe remains vigilant in his heart against the sudden appearance of unfamiliar cultivators. With a helpless smile on his face, he shook his head and said, Put the bees back." After speaking, he made a bow to the other person, without much communication, but only quickened his pace. That person didn't show any malice or bad intentions, just looked at his departing figure with a meaningful smile. "Go home." Yunhe suppressed the intention of the 3 red-striped spirit bees to divide and feed on the black ring hornet, and controlled the 2 spirit bees to devour it using the source refining method. The methods of spirit insects and spirit bees, unless a single spirit insect has extremely strong abilities and unique talents, are not won by quality, but by quantity. So the benefits of cultivating 1 or 2 red-striped spirit bees alone are far better than cultivating a small red-striped spirit bee colony first. It can not only play a certain role against the enemy, but also harvest more red-striped spiritual honey, achieving a virtuous cycle. After dealing with the red-striped spirit bee and resolving the stomach issue, Yunhe entered the cultivation room for tedious cultivation. Chapter 7. Blue Water Snail. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Training Room. Sitting cross-legged, Yunhe was surrounded by strands of light blue water flowing from his side. If you look closely, you can see that there are tiny golden threads mixed in the water flow, but they are not obvious. After a wave of spiritual power fluctuations, all the anomalies were restrained. After completing his cultivation, Yunhe slowly opened his eyes with a hint of satisfaction. Not bad, the feedback of the demon beast's body and power is becoming more stable. Can this cultivation speed be comparable to a mid-level spirit root? No, perhaps we can compete with the top-grade spiritual roots of course. This is when the demon beast has a leading cultivation level and can provide feedback to the cultivator. If the cultivation gap between the cultivator and the monster body is even, then the mutual feeding effect will also be greatly reduced. The cultivation speed comparable to top-grade spiritual roots. The speed of breaking through the 3 layers of gas refining may be even faster than I expected. It should also be related to the continuous use of the source refining method by the monster body to digest the golden carp meat, and the continuous improvement of demon power. Anyway, cultivation can improve one's level, which is more reliable than any external help and benefits. It's pitiful to see that he has been in this world for over half a year now, and he still has the cultivation level of refining gas on the 2nd level, with little improvement. If there is no feedback from the monster body, it may take another year or 2 to break through the 3rd layer of Qi cultivation. Palm light pinch technique. The 3 red-striped spirit bee flew and landed in his palm. Looking at the honest 3-striped red spirit bee, I felt its changes slightly. The demonic power of that mountain dragon is weaker than that of an ordinary black hornet, and it is still eaten by 3 red-striped spirit bees, bringing a pitiful improvement. This is still under the blessing of the source refining method. If we only devour each other like ordinary beasts and monsters, the transformation and improvement it brings will be even less pitiful. Indeed, the effect brought by the black-ringed wasp is better. Or, in other words, bees are the best. Let the red-striped spirit bee fly back to the beehive. After 2 more spirit bees digest the black hornet tomorrow, he will add 2 more red-striped spirit bees. At that time, 5 red-striped spirit bees will join forces, and with him, dealing with 2 black-ringed hornets will definitely be easy. Unexpectedly, it can even cause a big loss to the cultivators in the early stages of Qi refining. Just taking shape. After sighing silently, Yunhe sorted out the dough and fell asleep. Goo 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 goo. A few bubbles popped out of the mud hole scraped open by its claws, and a turtle's head slowly poked out. Coincidentally, I saw a silver carp with a body length exceeding half a meter chasing after a silver carp. The speed of the silver carp was very fast, and it quickly caught up with the weak silver carp by flicking its tail. With a slender and pointed kiss, it firmly bit the silver carp, and no matter how hard it struggled, it could not break free from the tight and sharp teeth of the silver carp. After a while, there was no movement. As for this, the minnow is accustomed to it. It has long been a seasoned hunter since it was able to grow to such a large size. Just as the fish was about to feast on it, it suddenly froze. I saw a huge turtle with a deep brown shell covered in some green moss, and its size was like half a grinding wheel. It slowly swam in front of it, pulling its paws, and its eyes were fixed on it, full of agility. What are you doing? Without any demonic power or spiritual activation, the fish suddenly thought it was coming to grab food, revealing a sinister appearance. The turtle's eyes were slightly raised, revealing a hint of humanized teasing. After several days of digestion and absorption, the demonic power finally calmed down. This turtle is naturally Yunhe, who has just emerged from the mud hole. Seeing that it has not only failed to escape, but also dared to attack itself, it confirmed that its demonic power has been completely restrained. When the blood demon power of the golden carp surged after drinking it, it was still unable to fully control its own demon power. At that time, a school of fish immediately scattered when they saw him, and even a loach with demonic power dared not even lift its head when it saw him. It is the instinct of demon beasts to freely display their demonic power and cultivation. This can intimidate opponents, present their powerful fists and claws, and occupy territory. But Yunhe felt that this was too flamboyant. Maybe at some point, you will encounter a monster much stronger than you and treat you as food for your stomach. Even second-order monsters may appear here, so it's better not to be too flamboyant. Low-key. Fortunately, after a few days, it has been able to fully control its demonic power. And after completely digesting the golden carp, his demonic power was once again enhanced. Although it may not directly reach the mid-stage of the first level, it has already allowed it to barely touch the peak of the early stage of the first level. In other words, it is equivalent to a cultivator's cultivation level that is almost perfect from the third level of Qi cultivation. As long as he reaches the peak of the first level early stage of cultivation, it means he is qualified to break through the bottleneck of the first level middle stage. The monster's body completely crushed the cultivator's body. Bobo. While he was thinking, the fish across from him spat out 2 bubbles. Demonstrating. Yunhe gave it a slanted glance, feeling bored. Take a breath with a fish. Still an ordinary fish without magical power. Jokes. Yunhe scratched his paws twice and pretended to leave. Suddenly turned back. At a speed that the fish couldn't react at all, bite it in one bite. Ordinary animals face monsters without even the opportunity to struggle, whether in terms of body or ability. Air conditioning. Not existing. I just haven't eaten this kind of fish before, and I'm a bit curious about its taste. Curiosity. A gentle breeze blew, causing ripples to ripple on the lake surface. Fish and meat are really not very good. It looks so big, but the meat is very rough. Not to mention compared to the golden carp meat, it can't even compare to other small fish Yunhe paddles and roast at the same time. Arriving near the water surface, one first quietly observes the situation on the surface of the water to ensure that there are no living creatures or dangers around, and then comes to the surface of the water. The air rich in spiritual energy penetrated into the lungs through the nasal cavity, making him feel refreshed. I feel that the spiritual energy here is much stronger than that in Xianxia. The gentle sunlight shines on the water surface, and the sparkling light makes one feel relieved. After staying on the water for a while and confirming that it was truly safe, he swam towards the shore again with his paws. He had already figured out the situation dozens of miles around here. He is located in an extremely vast lake. It is not very clear how big it is, as he is afraid to go to places that are so far and the safety is unknown. And what he was swimming towards at this moment was a lake island surrounded by a lake on 3 sides and leading to a forest on one side. The island is covered with sparse vegetation and many rocks are exposed. At first, if it weren't for discovering the blood-tracing lotus buried in the mud at the bottom of the water, he would probably have spent most of his time sunbathing on this island in the lake and occasionally going hunting in the water. After all, turtles are amphibians and cannot stay underwater for a long time. Climbing onto the familiar sun-drying platform, Yunhe lazily exhaled a breath. The soft sunlight was shining on my back, and I stretched lazily for a long time. The spiritual energy around him gradually entered his body with his breathing and every move. This is the state of most monster cultivation. Monster cultivation, especially for first-order monsters like them who have just gained a bit of demonic power and have not yet activated much spiritual intelligence, has no practical skills to cultivate. Most of them are natural practices, allowing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to enter the body. How much can be absorbed depends on one's own qualifications and the type of monster. It is said that some monster beasts are born at or above the second level, and there are martial arts, resources, and natural treasures provided by the clan for cultivation. If an ordinary monster doesn't happen to have some precious spiritual roots and materials by chance, and can cultivate to the later stage of the first level and activate some spiritual intelligence, it is considered extraordinary. Looking at the calm lake and listening to the gentle rustling of leaves behind, Yunhe's heart was particularly peaceful. The cultivator's body and the monster's body are not in 2 worlds, are they? Otherwise, why did night fall on the cultivator's side and the sun just rise on the monster's side? It is also possible that it is in the same world, if this world is round like the Earth, that's actually not much different from the two realms. How can others travel through two or even several worlds to become masters, earning a lot of money and accumulating countless resources for cultivation? There are only two bodies left for me to switch between, one of which is still a turtle. Shake your head and gather your divergent thoughts back. This kind of question had already been thought about countless times when he first came to this dangerous cultivation world. Just thinking about it, I can't get the answer. Instead of considering these, it's better to think more about how to live better and improve one's cultivation. I feel like we need to create a cave first. This place is not like the neighborhood where the cultivator is located. In the neighborhood, with the protection of neighborhood rules and formations, as long as you don't encounter indiscriminate cultivators or reckless robbing cultivators, staying in the neighborhood is safe. But here, monsters run rampant, and at any time, a big demon that he can't handle at all, such as the second level one he from last time. So, it is very important to build a cave that can be hidden at any time and can be used for peaceful cultivation. After basking in the sun for a while and feeling warm, Yunhe stood up with his paws up, ready to go into the water to find a suitable place as the cave. It's best to be near the shallow shore, so he can breathe at any time. Bobo. The water surface rippled. A black and smooth loach's head crawled out. Seeing it, Yunhe was slightly stunned. Isn't this the first stage loach that he scared away a few days ago? Coming to cause trouble. However, he did not feel any hostility from the loach, and there was even a hint of it close. After a slight ponder, Yunhe slowly descended into the water. The cool lake water covered his turtle shell, and the covering of the water made him feel comfortable all over. He sniffed lightly and smelled a faint smell of blood. Approaching the wandering loach, I noticed 2 rows of extremely obvious tooth marks on its abdomen. Are you injured? But the loach didn't seem to care, it just felt closer as Yunhe approached. It spits bubbles, conveying its meaning. Watching a loach diving into the water and swimming towards the bottom of the lake covered in aquatic plants, Yunhe pondered for a moment before following suit. However, he always remains vigilant and immediately turns around and runs, or retracts his turtle shell, whenever something goes wrong. The fact proves that he overthought. How could a monster loach, which has just acquired the initial demonic power of the first level, think of showing weak, ambush, and lure and kill methods? Between monsters, it is most direct. When 2 monsters meet, they either fight, surrender, or one becomes the food for the other. Following the loach, Yunhe pushed aside the swaying water grass and saw it swimming next to an excavated mud pit, appearing particularly excited. Yunhe also looked towards the mud pit. I saw several screws that were half the size of a fist, full of dark green and round, with 3 circles of threads. A nest of blue snails. Bobo, Bobo. The loach swayed its body vigorously and spat out bubbles. Xiuxian.com. It's like inviting credit, and it's like trying to please. The blue water snail is a type of spiritual snail that naturally contains demonic power but has extremely low spiritual intelligence and is not good at cultivation. It is one of the favorite foods for many aquatic creatures, especially underwater monsters. Yunhe once had the privilege of eating one, which not only had an outstanding and delicious taste, but more importantly, it could increase his demon power cultivation. Although the increase is not significant, for each demon beast, the food that can increase demon power is top quality. I didn't expect this loach to find such a nest. Roughly speaking, there are at least 2 hands involved. Looking at the treasure-like loach, Yunhe's eyes gradually became strange. How do you feel without any reason? I have an extra little brother. He thought that after scaring away the loach that day, the other party would move to a different place to live. Who would have known that it not only didn't leave, but also found itself such a nest of blue snails? At the end of the day, it's still that he doesn't know enough about monsters. Especially for this first-order demon beast that has just begun to develop its spiritual intelligence. Monsters value their strength and their fists. The strong are respected, while the weak are fed. Last time it encountered Yunhe, it was not beaten or turned into food, so in its eyes, it was surrendering to Yunhe. Since I have surrendered and become a younger brother, I naturally need to do what my younger brother should do well. Wow, wow. Suddenly, the sound of crying came from afar, and the loach's body suddenly tightened, revealing a tense and guarded expression. Follow its gaze. Yunhe saw a rapidly swimming giant salamander and stared fiercely at the loach, waving his teeth and claws. So, the wound on its body came like this. So this nest of blue water snails, did you also grab it? Chapter 8. Demon Revised Spell. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The loach is a newly introduced first-stage monster. And this giant salamander only left tooth marks on its body but did not take it down, obviously just entering the first stage. After making a judgment in his heart, he saw Yunhe's paw lightly scratch. A huge turtle shell appeared in front of the loach. The giant salamander across from him only then noticed his turtle, which was half the size of a millstone, and suddenly understood that it was a helper brought in by the loach. However, it did not feel much threat from Yunhe, and even did not detect much demonic energy, so it was not afraid at all. Wow! Shouting like a baby's cry in his mouth, his limbs swayed flexibly, accompanied by the swaying of his thick tail, and he pounced towards Yunhe. The most common and practical way of fighting between monsters, especially low-level monsters, is through hand-to-hand combat. Whoever is stronger and more powerful is powerful. But Yunhe remained calm and composed, his short tail swaying lightly behind him. Yunhe, who was trying to control the water flow, suddenly froze slightly. Whoosh! Between the flicks of the tail, a stream of water suddenly spiraled and condensed, like a powerful arrow, flying out. Although it is in the water, the arrow formed by this water flow appears particularly distinct, with no intention of integrating with the surrounding water flow. Puff! A blood flower suddenly bloomed on the giant salamander who rushed forward. The rough brown skin doesn't seem to have any protective effect. The wanton blood dissipates with the spiral arrow, causing the water flow to gradually disperse. Suddenly subjected to an inexplicable attack, the giant salamander was momentarily stunned, followed by a surge of pain. Wow! Wow! It curled up in pain and looked at Yunhe with a hint of fear. It didn't know what was going on earlier, but its intuition told it that the water arrow came from the heavily armored turtle in front of it. Water arrow technique. Actually, it's not just the giant salamander, Yunhe himself was also surprised. He is a monster of the water genus, and controlling the water flow is instinctive. So don't be fooled by the fact that he only lightly scratches his paws when he swims, but his speed in the water is actually not slow. It is precisely this understanding of water flow that has enabled his cultivator to master the spell, water arrow technique, proficiently. He just wanted to divert some of the water flow to impact the giant salamander, completely angering the other party in waiting for an opportunity to retaliate. After all, he is a turtle and can rely on his hard turtle shell. Defending and then counterattacking is the best way to fight. Who knows? Perhaps it is due to excessive proficiency in water archery, which is painfully skilled. It is also possible that the significant increase in demon power has strengthened his ability to control water flow, or that he has gained a deeper understanding and recognition of water elements. In summary, he unconsciously performed the water arrow technique just now. Or rather, it is a modified version of water arrow technique by the demon. The most shocking one is undoubtedly the loach hiding behind Yunhe. Just as it had just become a first-level early monster, it barely opened up its limited intelligence and widened its eyes. Turtle, magic. It has fought against the giant salamander a few times, but each time it falls into a disadvantage, and that's how the wound on its body comes from. But I didn't expect that the giant salamander, which had repeatedly suffered setbacks, didn't even have the qualification to let Yunhe move in front of him. It just shook its tail and left such a big gap. Thinking back to when he first saw Yunhe, the other person shook his tail and he was only expelled, the loach suddenly felt even more convinced that he had been taken in as a subordinate. This is Big Brother. Brother Turtle. When it looked towards Yunhe again, its body shrank slightly. I saw Yunhe constantly flicking his tail, arrows falling on the giant salamander in exchange for colorful blood flowers. The most important thing is that Yunhe's expression was calm and composed, and his eyes were filled with interest as he looked at the painful and struggling giant salamander, who was frightened and cowering. So ruthless. How terrifying. Water Arrow Technique is just the simplest spell, which uses spiritual power, seal, and formula to mobilize the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to cast spells. Yunhe, who was oppressing the giant salamander, had a series of thoughts in his heart. And my monster body is already a turtle, with much greater control over the spiritual energy of the water genus than a cultivator's body. Therefore, as long as I understand the essence of Water Arrow Technique, I can use it. This is very reasonable. Monsters are not incapable of practicing spells. However, for those low-level demon beasts who are just beginning to develop their spiritual abilities, the difficulty of learning spells is no less than the promotion of demon power, and it is far less practical than directly fighting with their bodies. For those high-level monster beasts, especially those with inherited martial arts, they disdain to learn low-level spells. They have stronger innate powers and bodies that can be forged day and night to become comparable to cultivator treasures. But for Yunhe, who is currently only an early-stage monster, a spell that can be freely cast has a huge impact. The body of a monster is stronger than that of a cultivator. In the early stages of Qi cultivation, if a cultivator is subjected to the Water Arrow Technique without defense, they will either die or be disabled. But this giant salamander only had a hole in its body, still alive and bustling. But one shot of Water Arrow Technique is not enough, so Yunhe will make up for a few more shots. This is not. As he tried and practiced, the giant salamander, who had shown his ferocity the previous second, was now on the brink of death, covered in terrifying wounds. After roughly understanding the level of mastery of Water Arrow Technique by the monster body, Yunhe finally threw a sharp water arrow. Sent away the giant salamander that was dominating nearby. From beginning to end, he never moved a single inch, and the loach behind him was filled with awe. After dealing with the giant salamander, Yunhe bit its huge body and gestured for the loach to bring the blue water snail and head upstream towards the shore, while still pondering in his heart. If the cultivator's body can learn new spells, can the monster's body be transformed into a demon again? It's not without this possibility. In no time, Yunhe swam back to the shore and climbed up with the giant salamander in his hand. The loach couldn't leave the water, so it had to place a nest of 10 or so blue snails of different sizes on the shore, honestly looking at the Yunhe who came ashore. Yunhe is not ambiguous about this inexplicable little brother who has emerged. He directly tore off one of the hind legs of the giant salamander and threw it into the water. The loach, upon seeing this, was immediately overjoyed. Grasping joyfully, he nodded frequently at Yunhe. The expressions between monsters are very direct, without any excuses or polite refusals. It is difficult to gain benefits from that giant salamander with its strength, and now it can be given a hind leg, which is definitely a big profit. Yunhe opened his mouth and wanted to say something. I suddenly remembered that I couldn't speak and couldn't transmit too much complex information to the loach. I guess even if he passes it on, this loach may not necessarily understand. I can only wave my claws helplessly. Let it play on its own. Upon seeing this, the loach wagged its tail, spat out 2 bubbles, and bit the hind leg of the giant salamander, eagerly diving towards the bottom of the water. There are more monsters nearby than I imagined. He usually spends most of his time nestled in one place and rarely goes out, so he only has a rough idea of how many demon beasts are living around and what their strength is. He only knows. About 50 miles west of the water, there lives a giant catfish that occupies a rich area of algae. And in the 70.80 nautical miles to the east, there lived a group of sea base with strong territorial awareness. Yunhe, who had accidentally approached, was almost chased by them. He really doesn't understand the distribution of those solitary, inconspicuous first-order early monster beasts. So having a younger brother is also good. At least in the future, there will be no need to hunt. At least they offered a nest of blue snails. He accepted this little brother. He threw the giant salamander on the back drying platform and didn't immediately go to eat it. Instead, he climbed to the shore and looked at the nest of blue snails. Most creatures born with spiritual power are extraordinary, but unfortunately, their intelligence is low and they are not good at cultivation. Most of them have not fully grown up yet and become prey to other monsters. If a blue water snail can evade predators and accumulate spiritual power for decades. Shake your head. It's a bit difficult. He drove the demonic force and picked up this nest of blue water snails along with the lake water, walking to the shore. Found a tree shade. Start waving your claws. I dug a small hole in just a few strokes. Step on the soil, cover it with a layer of withered leaves, and then let this nest of blue snails soak in the lake water. Keep it up. It's not that he wants to keep this nest of blue water snails for decades out of his imagination, it's just that he simply keeps them. After all, these 10 or so snails are not enough for him to stuff his teeth. Occasionally, they can still be used as snacks, but making them a staple food is indeed a bit difficult for them. He doesn't understand how to raise blue snails, but try raising them. Xiuxian.com. Maybe it will become. After becoming him, there will be a continuous stream of blue snails to eat. If it doesn't work out, eating it in time won't cause any loss. He has decided to open a cave on this island around the lake. If there is an opportunity in the future, perhaps we can also plant something on it, such as spiritual plants and rice. Monsters, especially low-level ones, are not as intelligent as humans. If monsters could cultivate tree art, other monsters don't know. But I do. This is his own advantage, and Yunhe feels it is necessary to make use of it. He climbed back to the sun-drying platform, bit off a large piece of giant salamander meat, and threw it into the small puddle of the blue water snail, including the meat, skin, and blood. Snails mostly feed on microorganisms and humus in the soil, as well as phytoplankton, young aquatic plants, and moss in the water. Considering that the blue water snail is not an ordinary snail, with the mentality of trying it out since it has been tried, it is not inferior to this piece of meat. After finishing these things, he finally comfortably crawled onto the drying table again and started eating the meat of the giant salamander. It has to be said. Although the meat of this giant salamander is a bit inferior to that of the golden carp, it is much better than the morning salamander meat. The meat is tough but not tough, delicious and delicious. I ate half of it in one breath. Yunhe suddenly felt a heat flow coming from inside his body, and his demonic power became active. When the remaining giant salamanders are about to hide, they dive into the water and float on the shore. Quick paw movement. Quickly, a mud hole was dug on the shore that was just right for it to hide. After barely ensuring concealment, he fully retracted into the shell. Operate the source refining method wholeheartedly. Chapter 9. Tax Payment and B-Entry. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hejianfang City. The sunlight under the sun is a bit more scorching and less warm. Time always passes exceptionally quickly in tranquility. In the lush grass, Yunhe wore a coarse cloth short shirt. Today, before the sun had set, he used a trick to summon back the spirit bees that were only working hard in the bushes. As the spirit bees returned to the hive, Yunhe suddenly felt a little heavier on his back. The accumulation speed of spiritual honey in spring is indeed fast. Ordinary bees can harvest honey several times a year in areas with more nectar, and so can spiritual bees. There is a spiritual vein hidden under the Hejianfang city. Although the main spiritual power is controlled by the Wang family, the owner of the Fang city, with only a few caves that need to be rented, the spiritual vein still makes the spiritual energy around the Fang city much stronger than in the wilderness area. The speed at which spiritual bees collect spiritual honey is not only related to the richness of flowers, but also closely related to the concentration of spiritual energy in heaven and earth. Open the beehive. Seeing the abundance of honey inside, Yunhe revealed the joy of satisfying the working people. These honey spleens, with just a little processing, are the purest spiritual honey that can exchange for many spiritual crystals. Of course, what truly satisfies him is not just these ordinary spiritual honey. It can be seen that there are several honey spleens in the open beehive, and the one closest to and at the corner presents a color completely different from the golden color of the spiritual honey spleens. It presents a dark red color. Red striped spirit honey. Although the quantity cannot be compared to that of the spiritual honey spleen, the concentration of spiritual power contained in its circulation is not comparable to that of spiritual honey. Unfortunately, the number of red-striped spirit bees is still small. At this point, Yunhe once again pinched the formula. Buzzing. I saw 10 spirit bees with dark red stripes flying out of the lush grass. If you observe carefully, you can find that 9 of these 10 red-striped spirit bees have 2 red stripes on their stomachs. There is only one, the one with the largest body size close to the size of a fist, with 5 strange red stripes on its abdomen. This group of red-striped spirit bees is the result of Yunhe's efforts during this period. After transforming 10 spirit bees into red-striped spirit bees and reaching the limit of the number of red-striped spirit bees that he can control with his current cultivation and bee control technique ability, he fed all the black ring hornets he hunted afterwards to the same red-striped spirit bee. Make it grow from 3 lines to 5 lines in a short period of time. Both in terms of body size, demon power, and combat effectiveness, there has been significant progress. Nowadays, even if it faces a black hornet 1.1, it can still capture and kill it with some time. It seems that it is not something that the weak spirit bees could compare to back then. In fact, Yunhe really wants to see how many stripes the red-striped spirit bee, which he accidentally created, needs to reach in order to completely transform into a true monster. But due to the constraints of the bee control technique grade, he dare not really make efforts to cultivate this 5-striped red-striped spirit bee during this period. If you don't control yourself and even run away or rebel, then it's not worth the loss. It's also beginning to take shape and has a certain level of combat effectiveness. Looking at 10 red-striped spirit bees flying around them. It would be great if there could be a more advanced bee control technique. With a thought, 10 red-striped spirit bees tightly clung to him and hid under his linen clothes. Cover the beehive, pick up the bamboo box, and walk quickly towards the shantytown. Go home. Immediately remove all the honey from the beehive and bring it to the pottery jar. Refining honey is quite simple. In no time, he obtained 5 cans of spiritual honey and a pile of honey residue. 4 of them are ordinary spiritual honey. There is also a can of red-patterned spiritual honey. Carefully hide a jar full of red-patterned spiritual honey in the dark compartment under the cattail. Carrying 4 cans of ordinary spiritual honey, he carried a bamboo box and walked out the door again. Go straight to Xianxia. He didn't wander around the neighborhood this time. But I went to a small house that didn't look very eye-catching. When he entered the room, he happened to encounter a cultivator who was dressed similarly to him and carrying a bamboo box behind him, walking out with a bitter face. As both spirit bee farmers, although they didn't know each other, Yunhe still politely nodded to greet each other. Enter the house. I saw a chubby monk wearing a long robe and a big belly lying comfortably on a rocking chair, leisurely fanning his fan and occasionally taking a sip of unknown tea, appearing very relaxed. Yunhe, ah. Upon seeing Yunhe entering, the chubby cultivator smiled and squinted his eyes, casually greeting him. Wang Guanshi. Yunhe had to show a smile of apology and quickly stepped forward. This Wang steward is the person in charge of the entire Lingnong in Hejianfang City, whether it is a Lingfeng farmer like Yunhe or a Lingzifu who grows Lingmi and Lingji, all under his jurisdiction. He planned and divided the entire Hejianfang city, the planting areas for spiritual planters, and the beekeeping areas for spiritual beekeepers. It is not an exaggeration to say that he has mastered the life and death of most of the spiritual farmers in the entire Hejianfang city. Are you here to make spiritual honey? Steward Wang shook his fan and sighed. It seems that what Master Lu Yun said is true. Hejianfang city is going to have a daifengshu, salad of assorted fresh vegetables, this year. It's the first time that you Lingfeng farmers have come to pay Lingmi so early. It's all Wang Guanshi who manages things well, and we little bee farmers are just taking over Wang Guanshi's care. Yunhe complimented while taking out a small cloth bag and subtly handed it over. Steward Wang took the cloth bag with great familiarity and gently shook it. The smile on his face suddenly became a bit strong. You're still sensible. Speaking, he looked at Yunhe and took out 4 pottery jars, squinting his eyes. I casually opened one of them and sniffed lightly. Well, the condition is good. I saw Manager Wang skillfully placing 2 cans under the table and shaking the fan again. Are you planning to keep these 2 cans for yourself or? Yunhe stepped forward and helped put the remaining 2 cans under the table, saying, of course, we will also hand them over to the Wang family together. There are no shops collecting spiritual honey in the entire Hejianfang city, and the Wang family has extremely strict control over this area. Actually, it's not just spiritual honey. The entire neighborhood doesn't even have a shop for collecting Lingmi. These agricultural products are only purchased by the Wang family, and other forces dare not or will not interfere in this business. So although according to the rules, Yunhe only needs to pay half of the harvest as taxes. But in fact, if you don't keep it yourself, you can only sell it to the Wang family. It's just the price, very good, the master won't treat you unfairly. These 2 cans of spiritual honey. Steward Wang shook his fan and smashed his mouth. With a flick of his chubby palm, 2 beautiful stones with spiritual power were thrown onto the table. Just 2 inferior spirit stones. Thank you very much, Steward Wang. Yunhe quickly hid 2 inferior spirit stones in his waist and put on a look of gratitude. After completing the acquisition, Manager Wang returned to his chair and regained his previous relaxed demeanor. Lower your eyes. Yunhe still had an eye for it and quickly retreated. As soon as you leave the room. My face turned black. Damn it. In the black market, Lingmi sells 2 inferior spiritual stones and a can, and purchasing at least 50 spiritual crystals from 1 inferior spiritual stone is even darker than the black market. No wonder none of the Lingnon who walked in here could walk out with a smile. Wild geese pluck their feathers. There's no way. Apart from the neighborhood market, only the black market still collects spiritual honey. But going to the black market to sell spiritual honey is not only risky, but there is also a possibility of being put on small shoes. The spiritual bee farmer who informed Yunhe about the price of their black market spiritual honey in the first place was re-divided into a beekeeping area the following year and went to an extremely remote and scattered spiritual energy place. Over the course of the year, not only did he not make any spiritual stones, but he also lost many spiritual bees due to the dangerous environment. This steward seems to have a broad mind and a chubby body, but in fact, he is a person with very little heart. Behind the scenes, the spiritual farmers call him a leech-sucking worm. Brother Yun, enter the spirit bee. Inside the Lingnom shop. Yunhe, carrying a bamboo box, entered the shop and was greeted by a cultivator who looked like an old farmer. Yeah, why not make it cheaper? How could that be? It's all the rules set by the host, I'm just a worker. He, whose mouth was wide open and only 3 or 4 yellow teeth were left, waved his hand repeatedly. He was also a spirit bee farmer before. But she gave birth to a good daughter and married into the Wang family. Although it is just a concubine of the young master of the Wang family, it can quite please the young master of the Wang family. I heard that I recently gave birth to a chubby boy who also has spiritual roots. So, under the operation of the young master of the Wang family, I helped He secure a position as the manager of the spiritual farmer's shop, Ling Feng. Many people who know He in the shantytown are envious and secretly work hard, hoping that their children will also be favored by the Wang family in the future. Even if they only become the guards of the Wang family, they will appear superior. Yunhe pursed his mouth. I also know it's a white question. Give me 15 young bees. Okay. This time, He was very pleased and turned around to move down a beehive from the shelf. Use a clip to remove 15 newly hatched spirit bee larvae. That's right, this is also one of the control measures of the Wang family over Yunhe and his spiritual farmers. Control the breeding bee source. There is no queen bee in Yunhe's beehive. Ordinary bees naturally need a queen bee to operate their entire colony smoothly. The spirit bee farmers have a bee control trick and indeed do not need a queen bee. Without the queen bee, the spirit bee farmers would not be able to independently produce young bees and had to go to the king's spirit bee shop to purchase them. Spirit bee farmers are controlled over bee species, while spirit planters are controlled over seeds, and so on. This is also a means for the Wang family to retrieve spiritual stones and crystals. In short, after layers of exploitation, the spiritual farmers can save very few spiritual stones in a year. Why are so many young bees all at once? Could it be that Brother Yun has improved his cultivation? Quickly, He handed over 15 young bees wrapped in oil paper and joked with a smile. Yunhe could only take out 15 spirit crystals and complain in his mouth. I don't know what's going on in my area recently. A group of black hornets have arrived, causing me heavy losses. Upon hearing of the black-ringed wasp, He, who used to be a spirit bee farmer, naturally knew the pros and cons, and his face slightly changed. I'll get off work later and help you report to the higher-ups. Yunhe waved his hand. I have already reported it. Jokes, it's strange if the Wang family manages the book garden www.Xiuxian.com. A typical black hornet's nest can only be steadily eliminated by a cultivator in the middle stage of Qi refining, and even more powerful ones may not be able to grasp them in the later stage of Qi refining. Using human resources is not a resource, is it? As for the reduction in spiritual honey production. So many bee farmers, reducing production by 1 or 2 is not a big deal at all. Moreover, it is also the spirit bee farmers who have reduced production that should be in high demand. They will definitely bring in more young bees to ensure production and also allow the Wang family to exploit more. He chuckled, clearly familiar with the tricks involved. Let's go, He. Looking at Yunhe as he left, after a change in his expression, He finally sighed somewhat dejectedly. Sigh. Okay, with the guise of the black ring wasp, the spirit bee won't attract too much attention. Yunhe, who was walking back, didn't actually feel that bad. He originally had 50 spirit bees. 10 of them have transformed into red-striped spirit bees, leaving only 40, and the production of spirit honey has been reduced. Now add 15 spirit bees in. It not only ensures the yield of spiritual honey, but also ensures sufficient bee sources. In the future, his cultivation will improve or he will find a more advanced, bee control technique, that can quickly replenish the number of red-striped spirit bees. I have a premonition that the opportunity to break through the 3rd layer of gas refining may be in the next few days. After half a year of hard work, there was no progress. Now, with the support of demon beasts, the cultivation speed has been greatly improved. It has only been over a month now, and he has already touched the bottleneck of the 2nd layer of gas refining, with the possibility of breaking through the 3rd layer at any time. Thinking of this, Yunhe's footsteps couldn't help but accelerate a bit. Go home and practice. Chapter 10. Practice Qi Level 3. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Returning home again. Yunhe carefully took out the spirit stone and spirit crystal and placed them together in the dark grid. 3 inferior spirit stones, 45 spirit crystals, 1 intermediate red flame talisman, 5 inferior guardian talismans, 1 inferior exorcism talisman. Still so poor. Yunhe, who was lighting up his belongings, smashed his mouth. Cultivating immortality to such poverty, is it the only one among all the travelers? I almost forgot about a can of red-striped spirit honey, which should be the most valuable among my pile. Looking at the jar of red-patterned spiritual honey, Yunhe fell into contemplation. After a moment of contemplation, he gritted his teeth. If left unsold, it's not worth it. Immediately bring a wooden spoon. A spoonful of it removed 1/10 of the spiritual honey from the jar. Just consider it a test of the effect. Muttering to himself, he swallowed this spoonful of red-patterned spiritual honey in one gulp. Suddenly, a unique aroma fills the mouth without any hint of sweetness. The taste is indeed good, more fragrant than ordinary spiritual honey, with a silky and smooth entrance. As he savored the taste of the red-patterned spiritual honey, a strong spiritual energy overflowed from within. He immediately didn't care about whether it was expensive or what the taste was, so he quickly crossed his knees and closed his eyes to operate the golden water yuan jing. Yunhe, who was practicing, could clearly feel that with the repeated operation of the Jin Shui Yuan Jing, he had 3 sources of spiritual energy. The rarest among them is naturally derived from the spiritual energy of the surrounding heaven and earth. With his qualifications and techniques, coupled with his location, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth is not particularly strong, and the spiritual energy that can enter the elixir field through the golden water element classic is pitifully scarce. A stronger spiritual energy seems to appear out of thin air, coming from the depths of the underworld. He knew that this came from the body of the demon beast, which was not very far away. It was the nourishment brought by the cultivation of the demon beast body, which was comparable to the peak of the 3rd layer of Qi cultivation. The most intense spiritual energy comes from his limbs, meridians, and muscles, more precisely from his stomach. This is the spiritual energy brought by the red-patterned spiritual honey. However, this spiritual energy is also fading at a visible speed to the naked eye. Time passes quickly. An hour later, Yunhe opened his eyes. There was no change in expression. Just took the wooden spoon again, dug another spoonful from the jar and ate it, then immediately closed his eyes and practiced again. Several times in a row. When Yunhe opened his eyes again, he had been unconsciously operating the golden water yuan jing for a full 5 hours. But this time when he opened his eyes, he didn't dig for spiritual honey or immediately sink into cultivation. A joyful expression couldn't be suppressed on his face. 3 layers. Finally, we have refined gas into 3 layers. Poor heavens, see you. He has traveled for 7 months now, finally breaking through from the 2nd level of Qi refining to the 3rd level of Qi refining. Red-striped spirit honey, what a good thing. Yunhe happily picked up the half-can of red-patterned spiritual honey that was left. Another flash of flesh pain flashed through. I ate half a can without realizing it. But if it weren't for the rich spiritual energy in the red-patterned spiritual honey, it might take a few days or even longer for him to break through the 3rd layer of Qi cultivation. Because he found that he had simplified the neck of the small bottle between the 2nd and 3rd layers during the Qi refining period, which was also the reason why he poured 5 mouthfuls of red-striped spirit honey in a row. It is said that for cultivators with both heavenly and earthly spiritual roots, there is no bottleneck in cultivation before building a foundation, and even building a foundation is much easier compared to other cultivators. Genius. Cultivation still places great emphasis on talent. This is also the reason why the geniuses of the heavenly and earthly spiritual roots are being crazily snatched by various major sects as soon as they appear. They are all legitimate elixirs and the future of the sect. In fact, even high-quality spiritual roots will be favored by many small sections. Fortunately, we can also be considered someone who has a problem. Yunhe immediately ended his self-blame and self-comforted himself with the spirit of AQ. Anyway, my cultivation has finally improved and reached the 3rd level of Qi cultivation. You can look ahead to the mid-term of gas refining. Although the red-striped spirit honey played a crucial role, the real reason why I was able to break through to the 3rd level of Qi refining so quickly was still the feedback from the demon beast's body. If it weren't for the continuous spiritual nourishment of the monster's body and the accumulation of cultivation over the past month, he wouldn't have had the opportunity to break through his cultivation with the help of red-striped spirit honey. However, the cultivator's body has now reached the 3rd level of Qi refining, and although the demon beast's body still has a leading cultivation level, it is not much anymore, so the backfeeding will also become less and less. Yunhe shook his head, temporarily not thinking about how to break through the distant problem of reaching the middle stage of gas refining. With advanced cultivation, the bee control technique should be able to control more spiritual bees and red-striped spiritual bees, right? Thinking of this, he stood up and opened the beehive. The 15 newly entered larvae have already gotten along perfectly with the spirit bees. And the 10 red-striped spirit bees are completely different from the spirit bees, separated by a partition in the middle. I saw Yunhe gently pinching the formula, his spiritual power running. Buzzing, buzzing, spirit bees and red-striped spirit bees all surged out of the beehive. Sure enough. Yunhe raised his eyebrows slightly. 55 spirit bees and 10 red-striped spirit bees can be easily controlled. He felt a little and pondered before muttering to himself. Approximately 80 spirit bees, 15 red-striped spirit bees. This is the maximum number of bees he can currently control. Tomorrow I have to be the 6th child again. Originally, when the number of red-striped hornets reached 10, he stopped to trouble the black-ringed hornet. Although he bought a talisman and was fully prepared, there is still a certain level of danger in the end. So afterwards, he just honestly released bees. Occasionally, black hornets come knocking on their doors and hunt and feed the 5 striped red-striped spirit bees. But now that the number of bees being controlled has increased, we have to take the initiative to find trouble with the black hornet again. With the help of the red-striped spirit honey, Yunhe broke through the 3rd layer of Qi refining and became more aware of the importance of the red-striped spirit bee to him. By the way, after driving away the spirit bees and the red-striped spirit bees, Yunhe's palm spread out and several slender black tail needles suddenly appeared in his hand. This is the tail needle of the black hornet, and it is also the only thing that the spirit bees cannot digest or absorb. After some understanding, he understood that these tail needles were not ordinary keratin products, but contained a hint of gold and iron. Gold iron. The Golden Water Yuan Jing records 2 spells, one is the 1st level lower level, water arrow technique, and the other is the 1st level middle level, imperial gold technique. Practicing the imperial gold technique requires more powerful magic and indispensable special metals. When I was only practicing the 2nd level of Qi before, it was a bit difficult to cultivate. But now that you have broken through to the 3rd level of Qi cultivation and your mana has greatly increased, you can give it a try. Yunhe recalled the spells and seals while using his magic to throw the tail needle. Pop. The tail needle with the meaning of gold and iron landed crisp, without any movement for a long time. Yunhe pursed his lips without showing any signs of decadence. He already knows the condition of this body, not to mention its spiritual roots, and there is not much talent in practicing spells. However, the Jin Shui Yuan Jing is not a sophisticated technique, and the recorded, imperial gold technique is certainly not a sophisticated spell. Practice repeatedly, practice makes perfect. Then he adjusted his mind and once again, he bent the formula to surge his spiritual power. I don't know how long it has been. Accompanied by waves of complex and awkward syllables, the hands pinched out complex formulas. The pitch-black tail needle lying quietly on the ground trembled gently, swaying and slowly swallowing, gradually floating up. Use gold to control objects and connect spiritual methods. The next moment. As Yunhe clearly felt the passing of spiritual power in his body, he heard a whoosh, and the tail needle hovering in mid-air seemed to suddenly move, turning into a black silk thread and quickly flipping inside the room. Illness. Dude. The black tail needle flashed away like a black on. A muffled sound came from the nearby pillar. Left a small black hole. Looking at the results, estimating the spiritual power consumed. Yunhe lightly twitched at the corner of his mouth. The damage is not directly proportional to the cost. It's not as straightforward as water archery. The original intention of Eugene Ju was to have cultivators drive flying swords, which were used to manipulate the tail needles of the Black Hornet. It is indeed a bit of a small skill. But using it for unexpected situations at critical moments can also be considered a means. At least it is a first-level medium-level spell. After practicing more and becoming fully proficient, the power should still be improved. The most important thing is that using the Imperial Golden technique to control the movement of the tail needle is much smaller than using the water arrow technique. Just prepare in advance for getting the flying sword in the future. Which man doesn't have the dream of walking thousands of miles with a single sword, and treading on the 9 provinces alone with flat leaves in his heart? Put away several tail needles. The feeling of hardship swept over. Just after completing a breakthrough in cultivation, I practiced the Imperial Golden technique for several hours, which consumed a lot of mana and energy. Despite feeling tired, he once again pinched the formula and summoned 10 red-striped spirit bees. After gesturing for them to alert the entire room, they peacefully fell asleep. A dark, warm, and damp underground cave. A huge turtle with a body size comparable to half a grinding wheel slowly opened its eyes. Looking at the cave he had worked hard to excavate before him, he showed a satisfied expression. After these days of hard work, Yunhe finally opened up a decent cave for himself. The cave is connected in all directions, with 4 passageways in the southeast, northwest, and northwest for entry and exit. It also has 2 paths up and down. Ensure that even if he encounters danger and gets stuck at the entrance, he can still have multiple paths to escape. In addition, he also dug multiple caves with different functions in the cave, including a cultivation room, a dining room, a rest room, and a breeding room. Even if it's a monster-like body, human instinct still makes it inevitable for him to become an exquisite turtle. Cough. The sound of a light cough sounded from the cave. Originally, turtles couldn't make sound without their vocal cords, but for some reason, Yunhe has been feeling occasional itching in his throat lately and can't help but cough. After a while, he realized that he seemed to be able to make a little sound. Through the inner vision of the demonic consciousness, it was discovered that he was gradually growing his vocal cords. It's probably not long before normal sound can be produced. This is also a part of evolution. Stepping on the soft ground, walking towards the breeding room. The moss emitting a faint glow brought a faint light to the cave, allowing him to see clearly the situation inside the cave. Saying it's a breeding room, it's actually a small pond. There is a nest of blue snails kept inside. I was originally just trying it out, but I didn't expect this nest of blue snails to be taken care of by him. Yunhe felt that his occasional feeding of some monster meat should have played a crucial role. Come to the edge of the pond. Looking at the blue water snails hiding under withered leaves and grass in the water, they couldn't help but open their mouths. Swipe your paw lightly. A round and plump blue water snail was caught in the water that was being picked up. Click, put it in your mouth and take a gentle bite. Suddenly, the plump juice mixed with a special taste filled the mouth. Not only is there no earthy smell, but there is also a faint fragrance. Feeling the spiritual energy emanating from the mouth, Yunhe closed his eyes and silently practiced the source refining method at Xiuxian www.zhaoxuan.com. In no time, the spiritual energy brought by the blue water snail was completely refined. The refining of the blue water snail is much easier than that of monster meat. Even if not actively refined, its absorption efficiency is much higher than eating monster meat. No wonder monster beasts treat it as a treasure. The only regret may be that the size of the blue water snail is too small compared to the monsters. Even though it has high absorption efficiency, its overall size is not enough. Eating one every 5 days is enough to ensure that this nest of blue snails will not become extinct. Realizing the freedom of blue snails may be a long way off. Perhaps I can slow down my eating frequency or feed more monster meat. Yunhe thought as he walked out of the breeding room, swaying and swaying. Stepping on an upward slope. Remove the sealing soil from the top of the head. A ray of sunshine pierced down. Climbing out of the cave and onto the island, Yunhe took a deep breath. Now he has confirmed that the spiritual energy here is indeed much stronger than the market where the cultivator is located. No wonder so many monsters can naturally emerge. Bobo Bobo. As soon as Yunhe arrived at the shore, a loach emerged from the water and greeted him joyfully. I've worked hard, let's go rest. Regardless of whether the loach understood his meaning or not, Yunhe waved his paw. It's safer than before to have a little brother guarding him while he's asleep. Bobo. The mud loach, which was already accustomed to it, spat out 2 bubbles again and swung its tail downstream. It's another peaceful day. Looking up at the rising sun, Yunhe sighed to himself. Climb onto the back drying platform.